Oh, good evening.
Well, hello.
Yeah, what's the date today? The 29th? Good evening. It's January 29th, 2024, right? 2024? That's the one, as I stall for time. 2024. So if you haven't noticed, things are a little bit strange right now, and that's because our producer has had no internet for the last about going on 7 hours. So Sam here and I, we're doing this the backup way. We're backup streaming. So good evening to everybody. It is, again, like I said, January 29th, and welcome to a very special edition of the show where at least I'm going to be sharing my list of hockey players for the 2024 NHL Draft. And we're going to, go over Sam's a little bit as well and sort of compare and contrast and really get into it. Yeah, yell at each other. I'm sure there's going to be some spirited discussions. But before we get into that, obviously got to do all the fun ad reads. So welcome to Scouching. Welcome to Scouching Live. I'm Will, and I'm brought to you by Sam McGilligan, my co-host. And I'm also brought to you by Fanatics. You can use our affiliate link in the description below or scan the QR code in the box right over there next to Sam. And anything you buy in the store will give us a small kickback to support the show and keep our lights on, which is great. You can also support us. Both of us work over at Puck Preps as well. I just filed a couple of reports on the CHL Top Prospects game and the USHL All-American game. Both were tons and tons of fun, as you know. And you can also get your CHL entry draft information through that website. And also you can subscribe, of course, to my website, Scouching.ca, where you get exclusive access to innovative data tools with unparalleled insights into draft prospects and players making their mark in the NHL. And finally, we're brought to you by Fractal Hockey Consulting, which is the business I have founded. I appreciate the eyebrow raise. Where we put together player profiles using hand-tracked data profiles and analytics packages for NCAA and European recruitment. But we are more than happy to service whatever your needs might be for your organization. So, Sam, you've been on vacation. Before we get into the fun stuff, we'll let some people file in. How have you been? How was you went where? How was it? What was what'd you eat? What's up?
I went to Cuba. I ate liquor.
Good man.
I actually didn't really drink that much. I just wanted to make the joke. I really didn't actually.
Yeah,
I
I got
mostly
you.
just did nothing for a week, and it was breathtaking. It was 50-kilometer winds for most of it, so I just sat there and got blown away.
Oh yeah,
it was amazing.
That's nice.
That was the first time there.
I've never been.
It's beautiful,
to
say the least.
I've
Absolutely
never.
incredible.
Yeah, I've never been to Cuba. Kind of always wanted to go. I've heard
Definitely
the food is awful. Sickness inducing, but
hey, what do you know?
Did you not travel with Imodium? Because that's like a must have. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, but you had fun.
Absolutely.
You had fun.
Came back extremely refreshed
Right.
and mentally clear, and had the most productive weekend I've had in 2 years.
That's beautiful. That's a good thing. What was the number one cocktail you had whilst you were away?
Pina colada.
A pina colada. Nice. So you're a pina colada man.
Yeah,
Nice.
but it wasn't by preference. It was by every time I went up to someone, they're like, "We don't have that right now," and then I was like, "Wow, okay, not a problem. I'll get this." And they're like, "Okay, we got that." And pina colada was the one that just seemed to work out the most.
Okay.
Other than rum and punch drinks that were 80% rum and made me want to die.
Oh, okay.
I don't do those strong drinks anymore. I'm getting old.
Yes, it happens quick, man.
Yo, I took a sip and just was.
Yeah, Friday night I had 2 beers and it was 1.5 too many. It was crazy. I couldn't believe it. I am so old, and if you don't think it's going to happen to you, it'll happen to you.
It happens.
I had one more question, but I forgot what it was. All I was going to say was that I'm more of a margarita man on the beach. I'm a margarita guy, but nice pina colada once in a while.
They both work very
they both
well.
They both work very well. That's very true. So the way this is going to work is I will walk through the top 32 names that are on my board. If you haven't found it, you can go to Scouching.ca, and the blog with the full list is now available, so you can go check that out. What I will do then is go through each of the top 32, and then we're going to sort of go through the rest of the list sort of in big batches. If you have any questions, of course, fire them away in the chat, and we'll get to them and have a look. And then Sam and I are going to sort of compare and contrast our respective boards. And I'm sure, Sam, you can feel free to stop me along the way for input and discussion. So I guess without further ado, there's not much else to say except to jump right in at number 32. And I'm also going to fully admit that I kind of forget where I put these players. I locked it in a week
This
ago.
is why I asked to put if I could get the
Yeah,
copy
I've
of my
already
list.
forgotten, so I'm also kind of half be surprised by this. So this is going to be a good time. So we're going to start with the last pick. We're going to go 32-1, by the way. Obviously,
you'll never guess who's at
you'll
number
never
one.
guess who's at number one. Dean Letourneau, probably, as David Phillips said, top, or EJ Emery. But anyway, let's start with number 32. I'm 95% sure I know who this player is. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so number 32, we got Miguel Marquez of the Lethbridge Hurricanes. This is a guy who I think you agree. Like once in a while, you see some incredibly high-end, sort of highlight level skill and finish, and he was a very high draft pick in the WHL draft and has not necessarily found the true sort of potential in his game, but his second quarter of the season, I guess you could say. The first quarter of his season was kind of okay, but in the last 20 games, I'd say he's really popped. He's well over a point a game now on a Lethbridge team that really needs some offense. The skill level is there. Pretty much everything is there. It's just a guy that you want the good stuff of more, right? Like you want him to, you want to coach him and motivate him and really just sort of get him going in the right direction and sort of bringing it more often. But I mean, he can, right? Like the skill level is there. We've both seen some really crazy stuff he's been able to do.
Insane stuff.
You know, a couple of the games I've tracked of his, I've done 3. One of them was outrageous in a good way. And so, yeah, I think Miguel Marquez slots in. I mean, is he going to go much higher on my board from here? Maybe, but I think somewhere in the 25 to 40 range makes a ton of sense for him. And so we'll get through. We'll keep these relatively short, and then we'll decompress later. But yeah, Miguel Marquez is the first one we're going over at number 32. So we're going down to 31. Thomas Galvis, your boy,
I love him.
from Liberec in the Czech Republic. This is a guy who is both very, very interesting and also kind of scary to me.
He's terrifying,
Yeah.
which is why I'm still a bit lower on him right now.
Yeah.
But like the desire to put him in the first round, it's a very tempting
I
thing
succumbed.
to do right now.
I succumbed.
He is absolutely so much fun to watch.
Yes, a very fun defenseman to watch. If you're not aware, Galvis is a 5'10", I think, 5'10" defenseman. Oh, it's right in front of me. Oh
I
my
was
god!
wondering, I'm like, what are you looking at?
I forget what I'm capable of. It's like the things that are right in front of me. But anyway, 5'10" defenseman, but really crafty, really creative, really just clever. Really, more than anything, I think he's mobile, but really gets away with sort of being clever and, you know, that whatever you want to call it, deception kind of gear that he has.
Yeah,
it's
he's
all
good at
there.
He's good at providing misinformation.
Yes. And the only thing with Galvis, and it's a big only thing, is just the defending is not great. If he is in close quarters or in his own end, like he's not a very big guy, not super strong, and I don't think he generates the quickness and speed really to overcome that for a guy his size.
This is where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
As much as I love offensive guys like Galvis, and he plays my style of offense and transition stuff. You can see like a clear path for even more improvement. But the defensive side, it's like you can't be rushing the puck up the ice if you're stapled to the bench because your coach is terrified of
It's
you,
true.
right?
Yeah.
So I'm still kind of figuring this one out, but kudos to you for sticking to the optimistic side with him.
Yeah, I mean, Galvis was in like the 35 to 40 range for me for most of the year, and then I watched a few of the guys that are like 28 to 35, and I just kept bumping them down, or bumping them up, bumping other guys down a little bit. And I mean, it's a big swing if you're taking him in the first round, but I do not think he's going in the first round.
He'll be like a third or fourth
like this is a
round
guy who probably will go late second round, early third, and you're just making a hedged bet that you're going to get something out of him if it pops. And there's risk, but I've been a big fan of him over the course of the season. And, but going into the season, I didn't really think he was that great at the Hlinka tournament, and couple of games in Czech Republic or in the Czech National League or in the Czech Extra League, I should say. He kind of changed my mind a little bit.
Yeah.
So let's jump into number 30. And if number 30 is who I think it is, people are going to come for me with pitchforks and scream at me. Yeah, it's Konsta Helenius of Euclid in the Liga. So this is a guy that everybody and their dog has at least, top 10?
I'd say top. Actually, you know what? No, I think I would say top 10. It's hard to find lists right now where he's not in the top 10.
We can look right now. Konsta Helenius is on average
9.94.
So he's ranked 10th overall on average. You also have him pretty low.
27.
Okay, so there are a couple of outlets that have him beyond 10, but nobody except you and I has him beyond 20, and I'm the only person who has him barely scraping into the first round. So I guess I have to explain myself on this. I have watched Konsta Helenius, I don't know, 6 or 7 times this year, maybe more. This draft has a number of players in it where if you're drafting them top 10, like there's a chance that they really underperform for a top 10 pick. And with Helenius, like arguably, I would say he's one of the smartest players in the draft, just with his spacing, where he puts himself on the ice, especially at a men's level. You know, he reads play pretty well, but there's not the guy doesn't really move particularly quickly. He's not particularly strong defensively in terms of physically strong. He's a guy who really, I think, gets by sort of going to the net off puck, finding space, generating chances, and his passing kind of remains more towards the perimeter. His pass volumes are really low in the data that I've tracked. A lot of the data that I've tracked on him is very okay, I would say. And I just don't see, especially at 5-on-5, I just don't really see a tremendous amount of super, super high-end upside. But if you draft him for the way he thinks the game and you give him a few years to sort of get stronger and become a better skater and a more mobile skater and a more agile player, you could get something there. Because, I mean, again, like we talked about this a few times over the course of the last few months, like how many players are 5'10" in the National Hockey League, but not super high level skaters, not high level handlers, super high end finishing ability, like shooting ability, and like Helenius isn't bad, but it's a question of like risk to me.
Yeah, he's average, above average to average at all tools across the board, and I find players in Liga, it's becoming a lot more evident in recent years that you can get away in that league by being really smart, because it's a league that plays a very unique style of hockey. What was it you said the other day? They're like playing...
Well, it's like chess. It's like they're playing chess, right? Like it's very methodical and like tactical and not very exciting to like. Yeah, it's not very exciting.
There's not a lot of pace to it, and like, pace is the name of the game in pro hockey. Yeah, everywhere else, especially the NHL, and you can score a lot of points by being able to outplay people in the chess move style of things. Yeah. But like, you're not gonna have the time, you're not gonna have the space, and there's not a whole lot of. That's the right way. Wow factor with Helenius, where you can see where it's like, okay, well, he's got that, so you can rely on that when pace comes up. It's like, I don't really know. Like, I don't think he's gonna be bad, and I don't think he won't play. Yeah, but I just don't really have too much of an personal interest drafting him, because it's hard to picture what role he'd have as a high-end player on my team.
That's true as well.
And it's like, what do you? Like, I think my write-up started with, like, what are you trying to do with a top 10 pick? Because it's not, take on all of this risk for what upside? Right.
And it's like, again, it's a question of, like, yeah, I think you nailed it, right? Like, what's he going to be? And again, like, this is also touches on, like, the World Juniors to me, and how the World Juniors can be an interesting tool in a evaluator's tool set, where it's like, obviously I don't use the World Juniors as a barometer for a guy like Helenius. But I had concerns about him as a player going into that tournament and you would think, looking at how much he's producing, that he would be a super, super high end, he's up there with like Capo Caco and Alex Barkov and Sebastian Aho and all these other super high end NHLers. But he goes to the World Juniors. And I mean, when I spoke to people, the best thing I heard about him was that he looked good, but to me, I don't think I thought he was okay. Like, I thought he moved the puck well.
He looked passable.
yeah, he was fine. He deserved a spot on the team, but he didn't really move the needle. Like the guys on that team that I felt moved the needle were like Haminaho and Newman and Haltonen even a little bit, and Yuri Lasala was another one. And I just felt that Hellenius, yeah, he's younger, but still, if you have a younger player at that tournament who's going in the top 10 of the NHL draft, like they should be must-watch TV if you ask me. And I just think he's okay. So I could see him being like a complimentary guy in the NHL. I don't know if he's going to be a center. I don't know what if he becomes a center in the NHL. I really don't really know what the NHL needs in a center because he's undersized. He's not very strong. Not the highest pace guy, but just very smart. So I don't know how far that can take him. But for me, it's just, again, it was like other guys. I watched them and I'm going, I found this guy more exciting. And there's more to this player and this player and this player. And it just kept, bumping him down further and further. But again, probably one of the smarter players available. 29, we got Marcus Kiersey. And this is going to be another one that I think people freak out a little bit about. Marcus Kiersey is a QMJHL defender from Charlottetown, obviously, as you can see it. He's not the biggest guy either, 5'11", so, but he's not tiny. One of the better mobile skaters, like if you look at mobility in the draft and the ability to sort of cover ice and just get around and close gaps and do all that fun stuff, he does it really well. But the rest of the picture is pretty murky. I think he's a great puck mover as well, like the way he fakes off pressure, creates new lanes, hits targets, especially even when he's got backwards momentum. He hits hard, crisp passes out of the defensive end, for example. He can be pretty daring in the offensive zone as well. He can really push into the offensive zone pretty well. He's generated really good offense for Charlottetown. Granted, quite a bit of it is on the power play. But I do really think there's a lot of potential with him. And this is a guy who, according to Central Scouting, is probably maybe not even a guy that gets drafted. But I really do think that there's a lot to like with him. And I think this guy might not end up super, super high on my list at the end of the year, but I just keep watching him. And the last couple games I've seen of him, and I think you watched him recently, or was it someone else?
It was me.
Yeah, and he was not good.
He was a guy.
Yeah.
But the strengths that you mentioned were there in little bunches and flashes, just enough where it's like, I see it. I'm not as sold, but I also haven't watched one of those games where he was more consistent with it. He got a place in my second round mostly just because there aren't a lot of whole players left who move and can kind of shake off pressure like him and to begin with, and that's such a high thing I value.
Yes.
But as seeing the complete form of what he is right now, I'm not all there yet.
Yeah. I just think there's something there with him. And, he's going to either be quite good or he's going to be an East Coast Hockey League guy scoring a point a game. Like, I like if the puck's in his own end, he can fall behind. He can lose battles. There's a lot of tough spots for him in his own end. But on the rush and moving pucks up the ice and getting offensive and creative, he can do all that. It's a really interesting it's a really interesting package. And if this is a guy you draft in the 7th round, I'm happy.
It's
and
a
yes,
trap.
I know this may very well be a trap, but of all the guys in Quebec, I mean, you've seen probably quite a few guys out of Quebec, and like he is one of the more exciting options. There's not many.
A lot of guys in Quebec.
Yeah, like there's a couple of guys that I kind of like in Quebec, but they're all 5'6", and once in a while you see fun stuff.
It's a shame how often that happens.
It's a shame, but
it's a surprising amount of times.
Yeah, but Marcus Kiersey's on the board at 29, and he's not. I'll tell you this: he's not going to go much higher ever on my board. This is about as high as he'll ever be. I also kind of put him here because I wanted to talk about him. But in any case, yeah. So that's that on him. So let's go to 28. Teddy Stiga, my boy, Teddy Stiga. What? Well,
28.
Yeah, man. I mean, he could end up higher for sure, but yeah, I mean, you've got him higher than anybody by about a cajillion slots. But I really love Teddy Stiga. His All-American game was great. I thought he played really well in that game. Part of it also is like he's not perfect, and there's a lot of guys from 28 I'd say from around here, maybe a little further back, going all the way up to like 19 maybe, who, you know, if you wanted to take Teddy Stiga at 19, I would be okay with it. But in any case, Stiga is the rambunctious guy on the NTDP this year. Super high energy guy. He's played center. He's listed as a left winger, but I've seen him play center a few times this year as well, which he's
filled in.
Yeah, he's filled in there, and I think he looks fine doing it. Like, he's a guy who will throw his weight around. Like we were talking about with, who was it? Not Marquez, Galvis. If you have the tools to sort of overcome a size deficiency in terms of foot speed and aggression, he's got it, I think. Great skill level.
Unbelievable skill
really
level.
Good skill level.
Not a player. I think I wrote this one too. Everyone talks about Stiga like he's some like 5'8" guy.
Yeah.
But he's 5'10".
Right. This is out of date.
Yes, he's 5'10" apparently. He doesn't look tiny on the ice. Like when I was thinking about it the other day, I was like, is he? I can't tell, the camera angle's not the same, but is he? He looks bigger than Gavin Brindley looked.
Yes.
He's a great skater, unbelievable skill level, and he loves to use it. I just love he has no fear of trying anything or anybody. And if he gets hit, he just gets right back up and just like gets back up in someone's face. And he's got all the things you kind of want to see from a smaller player to hope that they're going to make it. And he's not so small where you're just like, oh, he's feeble, he'll break.
Right.
You know, like he's 5'10", like he can fill out a bit. He's unbelievably quick. He's super shifty. He's got great hands. He loves to set up awesome skill moves and kind of mislead people.
Yeah.
He's driving the bus that Cole Eiserman is riding to
That
the
is
top
also
10
true.
pick.
Yes. He drives that bus pretty good.
He is the guy driving that bus. Cole Eiserman is not doing it.
Yeah. So that's it. Teddy Stiga, number 28 for me.
16 for me.
Well, yeah, you love him.
I'm a big fan.
I mean, I think he's my top-rated NTDP guy that isn't Eiserman. But anyway, Michael Hage, Hage. I keep forgetting how it is on the broadcasts.
Hag?
Sure. He's at 27. Another guy who I thought had a pretty good All-American game the other day as well, or last week. Super skilled, super smooth in terms of the way he creates plays and moves the puck up the ice. He's a guy who can shoot and score. He's also a guy who can set up a play really, really well. Not really the best team in Chicago this year with the steal, and he's really sort of, you can tell, I mean, he's putting up points on 36% of the team's goals when he's playing, which is pretty darn good. And a guy who, again, I think will only be limited by his foot speed. Like, if he can get quicker from a standing start and get quicker in a straight line and a little more efficient on his feet, he can it kind of looks like he's skating hard and going places, but he kind of just doesn't really get anywhere that easily. That sounds terrible, but it's more just because the rest of the package is so good for him.
Yeah.
That there's like a lot of potential. It's just a matter of getting there. And I feel like this is a guy you probably leave in college a couple of years
and let him
he's
definitely not one that you rush. The man.
Yes.
This guy had a very bad injury last year.
Yes, he did.
He missed a significant percentage of a season. And when he came back, I remember watching him.
He was not
the guy.
Yeah.
And then seeing him this year, he was better, but a little slower. And then it was around the end of October, beginning of November, where he was like, all right, I'm back into form.
Yeah.
And he pretty much caught up to all the people who had a year ahead of him in development. And he's neck and neck with all of them, or at least almost all the top guys in the USHL this year.
Yeah.
He's in the clear top 4 forwards of Connolly, Sasha, Haig, and Mustard.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if by this time next year he's kind of really killing it, really kind of starting to get ahead of some of those people that he's just catching up to now. Yeah,
I think Hage is a potentially a really great. I don't know if he'll be a center in the NHL, but the skill level is there. The brain, the way he sees the ice. I've seen him. Another thing he does really well is like his unconventional pass options that he executes are done really well. Like off the boards or trying to get pucks around guys or just his timing on like trailing forwards. It's all really good. And I think that that's also pretty high end. Like, you don't see a guy who can move the puck and like time things as well as he does, or put pucks, it's, like a billiards player off the boards trying to time things to get to guys in the neutral zone or into the offensive zone. He's very efficient offensively, and I think that goes a long way for him. So a couple of years in college, and I think you could have a good, pretty solid guy on your team. Let's go to 26. It's Lucas Pettersson, a guy who is on my board about as high as he will get because he is frustrating. I really like him, but that's some of the time. He's a player that I could probably have closer to 40 by the end of the year. But Pettersson's a guy who I think, gets going in a straight line really, really well. He's got a lot of speed. He can chase down loose pucks really well. I think he's a pretty creative playmaker off the boards. He can set plays up really well. The issue is that you just want it's like it's Miguel Marquez but ratcheted up, right? There's more high end pace. But Pettersson, you also see him disappear and be far too ineffective for longer than Miguel Marquez. Like, Pettersson's a guy who does a lot of things when he's playing. A lot of things are going his way somewhat often, but it's that next step of, I'm going to take over this puck play or this situation, and then I'm going to make something happen.
I had a very recent viewing of him where I found myself frustrated, where I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And then there's that moment where like the big play can come and it suddenly becomes
it just falls
so passive.
Yeah, it just falls apart. I don't know if this is just a trend in the last two games. Excuse me. I think he's kind of reached a point, or maybe he's kind of shying away from contact, which 100%,
like a lot more than he was before. And this is where I think that like it's like, can I make this play? No, it means I got to get physical. And then he just kind of backs off, and it makes
kind of ho hum. Like, it's a guy who I think has high end talent. And you can tell because he scores points. He goes international and he scores points. I think he's been better on the Swedish national team than he has been with Modo. And I also will say, that the game he played, where he played a few minutes in the SHL, he was kind of giving her a little bit more than what I had seen. But this is a guy where if I was on a scouting team and a bunch of people just went, yeah, I don't want him because he doesn't care enough, I wouldn't put up that much of a fight, as much as I love the guy, because it does look like that too much.
A shocking amount.
It's like, this is a guy who probably scored 3 points a game his entire life, and now it's sort of getting a little bit tougher, but he's still trying to be that guy.
Yeah.
And it's really tough to do that.
Sometimes I wonder if I'm watching him transition out of like being the top dude, and he's just not going to be catching up. Like, this is just the beginning of a kind of not a
stagnation,
slip, but a stagnation.
Kinda. Which fair.
Where when you watch Marquez has got that little bit of like pest to him.
Yes.
He doesn't care.
Yeah.
He will do some dirty rat stuff and like kind of
mix it up, and
and he and him are similar, but Marquez is not someone I see plateauing anytime soon. You're just sitting there and like, the path to improvement's very obvious with Pettersson's. It's like, it's obvious with you as well, but
I just have faith because this is a guy who I'd want to interview. I think the talent level is first round. It's just, you don't see it often enough. And I would want to know if there's actually something there, or if he's honestly there, just being like, I know I can play at this level. And like, it's like, I wish I were in the SHL. I just don't really care all that much. Some people might see that as a red flag for sure. But to me, it's just like, yeah, but he's also kind of correct in a way where it's like, when he's really flying, when he's really going, he's a heck of a player. It's just, 25 is John Mustard. Finally, we get to the mustard sauce of the show, the section where I don't know where I'm going with this, but anyway, we're big fans of John Mustard. Some NHL people I sent my list to a couple of days ago are not, but that's okay. I mean, the way I see it is this, right? He's a point a game. He was playing AAA hockey last year. He is almost ineligible for this year's draft. He's almost a 2025 guy. He is, I believe, a leading scorer on Waterloo, if not in the mix for top
He's
scoring
not
player on
only
the team.
among the mix for that, he's one of the leading scorers for NA born USHL guys just in this age group
Right.
in the draft year. Like,
Yeah,
he's
this-
like
yeah.
he was neck and neck
As a
breathing
rookie.
down Sasha and Trevor's
Yep.
throat when I looked a couple. Actually, I think it was a month ago now.
Yeah, Connolly's pulled ahead, I think, but Mustard is right there. Like
Connolly's been amazing
and
lately.
Mustard looked awesome at the All-American game. He was doing everything but score, and he still ended up with 2 points. I think it was 2 points. He at least scored the overtime winner, and I mean this guy in overtime is tremendous amounts of fun. He's just big power and speed, right? Like this guy has a lot of skill too. Like the thing I love about John Mustard is like on breakouts and on entries and stuff, he goes quick, but he also can pull pucks around you real quick. Like his ability to get around you is like really, really high end. And the only thing I see with him is something I think that like he's played 33 games in the USHL ever, right? And he's still doing this well. And the thing I can poke a hole in is his map of the ice seems to be very tunnel vision, right? Like he seems to be very like, I'm going to get the puck and put it in the offensive zone. And he can, but he'll look off easy pass options. He'll send passes to nobody. He'll send passes into like behind players, like just that refinement when it comes to moving the puck and that level of overconfidence that I think needs to be balanced a little better. I still think John Mustard has a tremendous amount of potential, especially as a guy who probably at this, I mean, if the draft were tomorrow, may be a second or third round draft pick.
I heard, I've started reading that message and it messed with me.
Yeah.
I know when I was watching Mustard in hockey high school last year, man, I could not believe how well he moved around the ice. And then I watched him in the USHL. He's the same player.
Yeah.
He didn't change anything, and it's Royal works to pretty much the same extent.
Right.
Which is very interesting and rare because there were a lot of people I would have put. I liked Mustard better than just about all of them, but there were some great players like nobody's going to know who he is. But Jake Marins was an amazing player at this level last year.
Yep.
There were a few other. Iro Butella is on Waterloo,
Yeah.
who was in some games better than Mustard was because he had so much size and reach and skill and just ripping pucks around guys and just smashing them in the back of the net. They're all struggling so much, and Mustard was just like, I can just carve through everybody this exact same way. It was really impressive to see him be the only one to make such an easy jump.
So yeah, this is a guy who I think is definitely going to, apparently he's somewhat polarizing, and I guess I can see why. But for me, it's like you zoom out and think big picture on him, and you go, yeah, like he could be awesome, right? Like the speed and skill in conjunction, in as pure a form as it is with him, I don't know who else in the draft I'd throw in. Like if you had to pick the guy who could both skate the quickest and also pull pucks around guys at the same time and just transport the puck really well, like who's on that list, right? I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head.
In the late first and onward range,
yeah,
there's
nothing.
not a whole lot of guys.
But like you don't see Beckett Seneke, you don't see even like, I mean, Berkeley Catton obviously, but he's in a different echelon. Yeah. But you like Cole Eiserman, you don't see Cole Eiserman get moving like John Mustard and get around guys like John Mustard, and but also like John Mustard's a great shooter. He can shoot it a lot and from all over the ice a little bit too much in my viewings, but he's still getting his chances, and he's a really good shooter. And so I think like this is a guy who I think may end up higher.
Igor Chernisov is a pretty good.
Yeah, Chernyshov could be one you throw in there. Yeah, Chernyshov's a little different. Yeah, Chernyshov.
There was someone else I had on top of my head, but it doesn't matter.
But in any case, we like John Mustard. We like the sauce. And on to 24. Danilo Stinkov. I forgot I had him this high. Not a great World Junior for him, I don't think. But who cares? Again, another guy who's almost a 2025 eligible player. Very, very young. Playing pro hockey in Switzerland, which is not an easy hockey league to play pro hockey in. Probably the second best pro league in Europe behind Sweden, I guess. It's up there. He's not like the people will point out like him and Leon Mugli are the two Swiss guys, the two Swiss guys over here who are really highly regarded for the draft. Mugli has all the points, but I think Ustinkov has all the potential. Like Mugli also plays a lot of minutes. Like he logs minutes, he plays on the power play. He's up at like 16, 17 minutes a night. Ustinkov is playing 6, 7, 8 minutes a night. For Zurich.
6, 7, 8 solid minutes.
And they're solid. Yeah. Like you watch this guy and I think there's potential for good sort of more offensive stuff. And when you see him internationally, you see him score a lot more points than he does with his club. But at the end of the day, like he's a guy who I think the defensive, like the tools he has could be deployed offensively a little more, but they don't have to be because he's so reliable defensively. Like this is a guy who I think, patrols the ice really well. Stick checks pretty well. He's still not strong enough on his feet to really defend super well at the pro level, but still, the numbers defensively are pretty good for him. And I think he's just driving a lot of really solid results. I think I tracked 30 games of him and it took halfway through game 3 for him to miss a pass. So this is a guy who just knows how to get the puck around the ice. He's a guy who in the offensive zone, like you'll see him he's one of those guys where it's like you almost see something great out of him where it's like he'll juke off a guy in the offensive zone, spin off of him or deke him out and try to get inside the offensive zone and create something there. And with Mugli, like he's got some good tools there and everything, but there just seems to be more interesting stuff for me with Ustinkov, even if it's more of a limited ceiling and a guy who maybe people devalue because of how so he was at the World Juniors, and he slips a little too far. But I'm a big fan of Ustinkov, and I don't know. There's not much else to say about him. He's just kind of a strong, stable dude who I think has potential. 23 is Topias Heinonen. Yeah, I have a different Eucharist guy ranked higher than Constant Hellenius who has 4 points this year. So how about that? I really like this guy. I really, really like Topias Heinonen. The offense isn't there, but it could be. And I think he's gotten a lot better since the beginning of the year with regards to, like, he took a spell in the junior league, played pretty well, did a couple of games at the second division. I thought he played great in those games. But this is a guy who kind of reminds me a lot of like Ronnie Hirvonen from a couple of years ago, where it's just he leads with the effort level and the brain. Like he reads play really, really well, causes a lot of offensive zone turnovers. This is a guy who also is 5'10", but I've seen him weasel his way out of situations where he should give up the puck so many times. Like he does not give up. This is a guy who
weasel's the right word.
Yeah, he weasels his way out.
Really good word for
him.
him.
He finds ways out of things, and it's really, really interesting how, like these are the types of things that I don't really talk about that much until I notice them a lot in a player. Like he'll eat the puck in the corner and then sort of just crouch a little and just shove a guy off of him and get out and create some room, right? Like he's a guy who just does not really give up. He's got a motor. There's some skill there as well. There are some areas where he is better than Hellenius. Like in terms of generating shot assists, he beats Hellenius there. The efficiency in getting pucks up the ice, he's better at that than Hellenius is when he goes through the offensive transitions. He's more involved defensively than Hellenius. This is a guy who, he'll, in my data, the defensive numbers might not look super great, but that's because he's involved so much relative to other forwards defensively that, he'll try to chase down, he'll try to forecheck and chase down a guy coming out of his the player's defensive end, and he'll try to lift his stick and it just doesn't quite get there, whereas other players might just not even bother trying. So it's like that kind of thing where you see sort of the instinct, right? And I don't know, this is an aside, but I'm a big instinct guy. Like if you can tell when you watch a player that their instinct is to never take the foot off the gas pedal, that's what you need in the NHL. Like there's nothing more frustrating than an NHL player who sort of takes it easy, especially when things are tough. And Heinonen, I think there's a bias against him for the size and lack of production, but I think he battles against it. I'd love to interview him because I think it'd be really interesting based on the way he plays. But I'm a big fan, and this is a guy again. Like I think he's 65th for Europe in the Central Scouting list, which to me implies like probably not drafted, but well maybe not. But you get the point. Like late, if anything, which I think is just crazy because I think I've been inundating my co-host with clips of him the last game I watched of just how much fun Tobias Heinonen has been. And you know what? Like if he doesn't become a top 6 forward, what is Konsta-Helenius, right? Is he going to be a third line guy in the NHL? Probably not. I don't think. Is Tobias Heinonen possibly going to be a bottom 6 energy guy in the NHL? He's smart enough. He has enough pace in his game. He works hard enough. He's resilient enough. I think there's enough there to sort of go with. 22. Zane Parik. Hello. Another one where I think people may be a little bit surprised, but I am not.
We are very in sync on this one.
Yeah, Zane Parik is strange. I mean, he scores a lot of points. But I mean, think about, again, we talked about this a few times, but like think about all of the guys who scored a lot of points before they were drafted, and it all went okay until the NHL, where the going got really tough. With Parik, I would be higher on him if I saw, and I can hear people in my head screaming at me, but if I saw higher end skill, if I saw higher end puck carrying ability, if I saw higher end, like he turns the puck over a lot. He takes a lot of risk. Defensively, though, also is not there.
This is it.
Like he's a guy who gets beat a lot. He's a guy who, you know, if a guy's cycling below Parek's goal line, he won't put him against the boards. He won't reach in with his stick. He'll just watch him go right by and try to catch him on the next go around or something. I don't even know how to explain it.
It's weird. Like we were talking about passiveness earlier with Lucas Pettersson away from contact, but it's like this is a defender now.
Yes.
Like this is a non-negotiable. It's very, some people are, I think, are just maybe overlooking it because they're like, you can work on this stuff, and I'm sure you can to an extent, but you realize that this is the OHL that he's doing this in, and he's trying to be like, the NHL are bulls. If you don't want to get mauled by OHL guys, every single NHL one will run you down and just look at you as nothing but just a pylon. Yeah. Even if I actually am higher on a bit of Parek's tools and decision making, because I think some of it is from Saginaw itself. They have a very interesting approach to the game, and I think they encourage him to take those high risk passes quite a bit. And maybe he, in a different environment, actually I've seen him in Team Canada, he doesn't take those crazy risky passes as much.
Sure.
So I believe that this is more of a Saginaw thing, but I kind of just don't care because the defensive thing scares me a pretty tremendous amount, and this has been consistent. This is not the defensive side is not him playing for the Spirit. Right. Canada doesn't matter. He does not seem to really appreciate the necessity of a physical game, and even without that, his stick's not the best. His positioning is fine, but a little risk-inducing. Definitely tries to get into spots for transitional play, I find, when he's in the defensive zone a bit more, and kind of takes those risks and to get a big in a more aggressive spot. But then he's not also the most like drop your jaw transitional player either. So it's like that's a chain I really don't like.
And here's the thought experiment, right? For me, who are the elite offensive defensemen in the NHL that they are so elite you could forgive them for defensive faults, right? Like Tony DeAngelo might be one, right? Like you could say Quinn Hughes or Cale Makar or whatever, but there is no possible way that that Parek is in that echelon, I don't think.
No,
like
he's
those
not
guys,
a Quinn Hughes,
those guys are like some of the best skating defensemen in the world, and when they were this age, they still were
the best unbelievable defensemen in the draft.
Unbelievable skaters, like unbelievably mobile and fluid, and I don't see that out of him. So with Parek, it's like, is he more of that, you know, Ty Smith, Adam Boqvist, who else is on that list? Ryan Murphy, Ryan Merkley, you know, guys who, you know, there's defensive warts when you draft them. Tony DeAngelo's another one. But even Tony DeAngelo, I think, had some more fluidity and creativity to his game than Parekh. I don't know. And DeAngelo came with his own problems, not the personal ones, but on the ice. Like, he has his own issues that he bounces around teams, right? Like, would you draft Tony DeAngelo 3rd overall in the NHL draft, or 5th overall, or 8th overall? Maybe, but I personally, I wouldn't.
I got one final comment on him, and it's that for me, I'm really starting to realize just how much, like, I love the best parts of Zane's game. Like, some of the passes he makes in the offensive zone just drop my jaw, but I'm not going to sit there and be like, yeah, that's going to be the thing that gets him out of all of these other problems. And because all of those other problems are going to become exponentially harder to work around and deal with, how often is he actually going to be in a position to make those crazy passes to begin with?
And that's,
what is it worth? What is 4 or 5 really cool ozone passes in an NHL game against NHL players, especially if you were drafting them in the top 10 or top 5, some people have top 5. It's like, that is you're drafting him a first pairing guy.
Yeah.
You're putting him out there against Nathan McKinnon.
Yeah.
Have fun.
Yeah. And I don't, so it's a tough call for me with him. I'm obviously going to watch lots more Zane Parekh games, but every single game I've seen him with Saginaw this year has been pretty much the same pros and cons coming out of it. And I don't see a top 10 guy there personally. TJ Ginla is at 21 for me, and I like TJ Ginla quite a bit. Yeah. He's a good player, hard worker. You can tell he's the son of an NHLer. He busts himself on the ice every single time.
Great player.
Yeah, really, really good player. A talented guy. I wonder how much he's going to get in the NHL in terms of, the strength. He's not the biggest guy. He plays big, which is great.
He plays real
big.
He
tries to play big.
He keeps his skill through contact too, which is something really nice in this draft. I feel like a lot of the skilled guys, once they get into contact, they're like, it's not working as well for them, or it's the opposite. They're just, the really good physical players don't have a whole lot of skill. Yeah. He's got this awesome blend in the middle with a great shot. Yeah.
Yeah. So Iginla's a pretty straightforward one. He just is a strong-minded, well-rounded, really good forechecking guy who should be in the NHL at some point. Maybe not as a first-line guy, but he can move the puck okay. He forechecks really well. He plays hard. He can shoot. He can also set up a play. It's just on Kelowna. There's nobody to give the puck to, really.
Except for Andrew Crystal.
But, I don't think they play together. I haven't noted them playing together that much.
Maybe I'm just catching some interesting samples because I just did a Ginla game. I did 2 of them recently to do some catch-up ones. He played with Crystal on both of them.
All right.
And my lordy.
Maroon.
The 2 of them together are an awesome duo. They really complement each other well, and Andrew Crystal's gotten so much better at the things people were mad at him for.
Oh boy!
And Ginla is a part of it too. And only reason I'm bringing up the Crystal thing is because Ginla is actually helping Crystal out in some of these areas, and that's the type of role you're going to want him to be playing alongside a star player if he is going to be a top 6 forward.
Yeah, easy to see him as an NHLer. Doing a number of different things pretty well. I like him. Anyway. And I also am kind of hoping we can get through these a little quicker. Sacha Boisvert at 20. Again, another guy who I really, really like. Big, really good skating center who can get up and down the ice really well. He's got a pretty good shot as well.
Super fluid.
Yep, really fluid on his feet. An okay defensive center as well, but he's more of a transition guy, an attacking offensive center. I would like to see a little bit more sort of ability to create space in the offensive zone and sort of slow things down and make plays a little bit more than he does. But I've really liked Sacha Boisvert this year on Muskegon. I watched a game of Matvei Gridin this year. I don't think Matvei Gridin has as many points this year if Sacha Boisvert isn't on his line, sort of feeding him pucks and sort of grinding things out defensively here and there. So I'm a fan, and I think you are too, right?
I had him 12.
Okay,
so I'm a big fan of him. The answer is yes. I see more in the offensive zone that's working for him right now, and I also think there's very few players that make me more excited when I'm like, man, when you get stronger, what are you going to be? He's already big. He's rangy. He uses his reach really well. He's super good at turning off of guys. Great skater, as you said. I really love his movement off the puck. He's like Really good at supporting his wingers and his defenders. Great in transition. I like his defensive game a little bit more, but I do see a bit of the issues. I think the package as it just continues to unlock more things for him with strength more than almost any other player, and so much is already working, and the strength will, and like, it's not like a will it come, it will come.
Yep.
So it's like I can't wait to see what he is.
Fair enough, but yeah, we're both fans. He's good. Igor Chernyshov at 19. This is a little bit low from what I would maybe, I don't know, like it felt low when I put him here, but the guys ahead of him I also really, really like. I mean, Chernyshov is interesting. He's played pretty well in the KHL when I've seen him.
Beastly moments of skill.
Yeah, great skill at moments.
Skill.
Yeah, he's got some good bursts of speed as well. Gets up the ice pretty well. My only thing with him is like, is it enough to sort of be a top 6 guy in the NHL? Because I'm not sure he's anything else. I don't know.
He doesn't have a whole lot of his, like, he's not a very great, I don't want to say hockey player because he's obviously a really good hockey player. But
no,
like,
he's great.
He doesn't contribute to a lot of areas that you need to in your traditional, like, move the puck up the ice, move the puck back down, get it, secure possession, move it back up. But like when he gets the puck and he decides he wants to go, he'll go. And there are moments where KHL guys are like, all right, I got him. And they kind of get him and he has a second effort level of skill.
Yeah, he does.
And they're like, even the KHL guys are like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like you can tell like they think they've got him and they start to pivot away. And then he gets out with the puck behind them and you're like, huh?
Yeah. He's a grinder, right? Like there's the stereotype, right? That I don't know if it's even around anymore, but like Russians are soft or whatever, but I would certainly not call him that.
No.
It's just a matter of like, I see him in a similar way to like Danila Yurov a couple of years ago, where I think he's just a little bit more skilled, and maybe a little bigger, but just a similar sort of, I'm not sure what he's going to be, but I get the feeling he's going to be pretty good. You know what I mean? Like he does stuff good, but I don't know what he's going to be. But I like the guy. Now it's where I don't really know who's where. So at 18, we got Emil Hemming. Sam needs to earmuffs, but I like Emil Hemming.
Igor?
Yeah, I know. This might be a questionable take. Actually, now I think that this has changed because I did a game of Hemming last week. But I'll pretend that I didn't change anything. But I like Hemming because, again, like this is a draft where there's not a lot of certainty, and I get the feeling that you're going to get a good third-line guy out of him. Like he's a grinder. He goes quick. He's a good skater. He gets around the ice pretty well. I've gone out of my way to watch him and Consta Helenius back-to-back, and I'm constantly more interested. Get it? Constantly? I'm constantly more entertained watching Emil Hemming zip around the ice, hit guys, try to cause turnovers. He's got a great shot as well. He scored 7 goals this year in Liga, which is not an easy thing to do. I don't think he's going to be a super high-end needle mover at all, but I do think this is a guy who, over time, he gets stronger, maybe gets a little bit, like, again, the skill level is not the best for how he kind of plays the game. Like, I can find he gets the puck and then kind of stumbles over it or loses it coming through the neutral zone and just doesn't really quarterback play that well. But I really like what he brings to the table. And I do think Chernyshov probably should be higher, but still, I'm a fan of Hemming. And we'll talk about him a little later for sure. I have it in the notes, but because he's one of the guys where I think you and I are most disparate.
I don't even have him in the first.
Well, that's because you're a loser. Number 17, Liam Greentree. Again, another guy who I would have higher. I would. But the key weakness is how sort of slow and heavy-footed he is. Like, that's literally the only thing.
That's the only
Literally
thing.
the only thing.
That, and I can't tell. I was talking about this. I was like, I can't figure out certain areas of his game of how he would work, like, with a really good team because he's forced to, A, do so much where he's effective everywhere.
Yep.
B, succeed at doing it just to watch someone else fail.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's moments where I'm like, I can't figure out if I like what he's doing or if he's just like, should I even go up the ice here? Should I do this? Should I do that? Do I need to cover that? Do I need to do this? There's like inconsistencies in his game. but I don't fault him for them at all. Like none of them do I watch them and go, I know this isn't you, man. You're too smart in too many moments for me to think that you want to just circle back and kill that rush opportunity. You just had no faith. It's like sometimes I'm like, you just didn't have you didn't want to fully commit.
Yeah.
And he's a guy, because he's slower, he has to fully commit to these sequences, or the timing's going to be off. So these awesome plays can build up for every other prospect in the draft that I don't feel like Greentree gets a chance to shine in, even though he shows individually he's great in all of those moments.
Yeah. I mean, he's a guy, the thing I love and also question about him is that he's at his best when he's like got a guy trying to get the puck off of him. Like, he'll protect the puck. He's probably one of the better puck protectors in the entire draft. He's one of the better, like, the way he thinks under pressure and like, I've seen guys trying to get him when he's in the offensive zone. He's out near the blue line, kind of. His body is faced towards the neutral zone. He's not even faced towards the net. A guy is right there with him, and he finds a way to free his elbows, free his hands, and throw a puck sort of behind him into the slot. And there's just a guy there ready to sort of go. Like, you don't see that kind of stuff that often, ever. And his ability to sort of play under pressure is both, I think, a good thing, boding well for the NHL, but also questionable, because it's like, then what happens when he doesn't, when he's in open ice? And generally what happens is guys catch up to him. So either he learns how to sort of work around those weaknesses and become a really, really, really good sort of complementary offensive guy, or he works on his skating, he gets a little bit quicker, doesn't put on too much weight, and becomes sort of a tall but skilled, guy who doesn't back down and can handle pressure and can make great plays. Like, his ability to just generate offense on a team that is not good is really, really impressive. So yeah, Greentree's a guy who I think was higher on my list at one point, but he could end up higher on my board by the end of the year for sure. Number 16 is Luke Misa, your boy, Luke Misa.
Yes.
Luke Misa's weird, but I don't really care, because Luke Misa's going to be available at like 80th overall at this rate, and you may as well take the chance on him. I thought he was one of the few guys at the top prospects game who was really pushing the puck up the ice with a lot of momentum and speed and intensity. One of the few, I'd put Iginla in there too, but like Misa was one of the few, and Basha was another one. But Misa's a guy who just ruthlessly skilled, always a higher pace guy, again, similar to Heinonen, where, he's not the biggest guy, but you don't really care, or Stiga, where it's like, he doesn't back down. He applies pressure really well. Just a really talented player.
Super fast.
Yeah, super fast.
It's the separation that really gets, it's like, that's the trait that has set him above so much for me.
Yep.
When I see him in a lull, or he's kind of got a guy coming in and he's definitely who has some speed on him, he's going at speed zero, and then he's still 2 steps later faster than the incoming pressure. And it's like, okay, that is crazy speed. Yeah. And it's not hampered with a lack of lateral agility. He can absolutely shift and get around guys really well. We were talking about John Mustard. Like, Misa can get around guys. He's got good instincts on the rush and in transition. I believe a little bit more than most, I think, in his ability to contribute in the cycle offense. I think he's got a lot that works out for him really well there, and he's still just figuring it out. But the moments where it pops, I'm like, wow, that's some of the best plays I've seen from anybody this year.
I think a great coach system and a great coaching network and a great development staff could just run with this guy. Yep. Like, I get the feeling that, some of the decision making in the offensive zone is not great, right? Like, I think he's more of a volume playmaker rather than like trying to create something that will work a lot of the time. But again, like, that might be a criticism, but he's still on pace for like 100 and something points this year or something like that. Yeah. And he's, like, Porter Martone is scoring a gajillion goals this year off of Luke Misa putting the puck in front of the net for him, creating chances for him. Again, it's like with Luke Misa, he still has that like AAA kind of, I'm really good at AAA kind of hockey, where he can sort of do these lower percentage plays and kind of get away with it a little bit, but not as much as he used to. And now it's kind of like, yeah, but the NHL is going to be very different. The AHL is going to be very different. And, you know, I think this is a guy who probably will not be drafted this high. But if he's your second guy off the board, I think you've done a great job. It's a good bet to take. Super high energy guy, very admirable player to watch. It's just a matter of refining the sort of offensive zone, I guess you would call it, like perception or vision or whatever you want to call it. Just isn't quite there for me, but I like him a lot. Sam Dickinson at 15. I've dumped him down quite a bit, but I did this with Michkov last year around December where I just dumped him to where I thought he deserved to be. And then I just went, all right, from here on to the end of the season, I'll move him up if I see more stuff that I like. And with Dickinson, like, his weakness is passing the puck, I think, especially up the ice through the neutral zone. It's sometimes a little bit mystifying. Just the timing and the decision making, and how I don't like using the word careless, but there are moments with him where he's kind of careless with possession. And, is that fixable? Or you could put him with the right player to fix that? Sure, I can't say it's impossible. But with Dickinson, I've just sort of been... It's like Hellenius, right? Like, I've been sitting around waiting for a top 10 quality guy there, right? Like, what is it that sets him apart to be a top 10 sort of high-end NHL guy? I think he could be a good minutes-eating NHL defenseman with some offensive tools there as well, but I don't know. I've just struggled to see a guy who really sort of takes over a shift and really takes over a game on a consistent, on a relatively consistent basis in Dickinson. I don't know. I could eat those words in a little while, but in the games I've seen and the games I've tracked, he's a mixed bag for me. But I like him, obviously, because he's this high in the draft. But there's just guys ahead of him that I think are more exciting, have more upside, and bring more in like an area where that's their focus. Whereas Dickinson, I don't think really has that like home base area of play where he can really sort of thrive in the NHL, which always scares me when there's defensemen at the junior level, and they're going to be at the junior level for a while, where it's like, what are you, right? Are you a more offensive leaning guy? Are you kind of like the guys who tend to be reputed as like a do-it-all generally don't do it all in the NHL, right? Like that's kind of the breaking point. But I'm willing to be wrong, and this is about as low as he'll get on my board for sure. I guess we can just move forward because I don't know what else to say about Sam Dickinson unless you've got more to add, but we can talk about it later.
I really like Dickinson.
Okay.
The last two games were awesome. I can save this conversation for a future stream just to get through some stuff, but I see where you're coming from. I've also seen moments from Dickinson where you can summarize it as the right team can do so much with him.
That's fair. I think that's fair. Like, if he gets drafted 6th overall, it's like, okay, I get it. Like, I see it. But it's just there's other guys that have interested me more. At 14, we got Trevor Connolly. Trevor Connolly is an interesting one. He's a guy who certainly doesn't, again, like, who's the guy we were talking about? Michael Hage. A guy who doesn't really have that much of a supporting cast with Tri-City, but it's not as bad. A guy who the combination of skill, footwork, and pace in his game, it's really good there. It's all there. I would be surprised if he wasn't a little bit taller than 6 feet. I feel like he looks a little bit bigger than what I remember last year, but that's a minor point. But again, like a guy who can drop a shoulder, attack the net, like just a very projectable offensive game to the NHL for a sort of skilled and powerful winger. He gets the puck to the middle of the ice a lot. He really doesn't sort of do the low percentage stuff very often. Honestly, I don't really know how many negative things I can say about Trevor Connolly. I don't know what you might have in store, but he's a guy who I think just plays a really well-refined offensive game that I think is projectable to the NHL as it is.
Yeah, he's a pressure machine when he's away from the puck too. Like he will be a nightmare for a defender they want some space. They want to be able to look up and make the easy play. And there's Trevor
Yeah.
always in their face, cutting them off. And he's always coming from their blind spot too,
Yeah.
which must be the most frustrating thing. Like, where is he? Oh, there he is. Like that type of stuff.
Yeah.
My only complaint with him is when Tri-City, as you said, is in the best team. But man, Haig tries to do everything he can to elevate Chicago. Connolly looks looks at his team.
That's a good point.
Even worse than Mustard looks off guys.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's like, yeah, but we're just not. Maybe this part of his game isn't all there yet. We all know Connolly is like an elite playmaker when he wants to be.
Yep.
And it's really concerning sometimes how much you can watch him actively choose not to be one, so he can cycle the zone 3 times in a shift or something.
There's a bit of like Cole Sillinger to me with him, where it's like in the USHL, we said basically the same thing, right? When he was with Sioux Falls,
Oh man, he
was a selfish guy who was trying to do everything
frustrating.
himself, and the tools were there. You saw the shot, you saw the puck carrying, blah blah blah. Connolly might not be the sniper kind of guy that Sillinger was, but in terms of playmaking and vision, and
replaces
it's
the shot with
there.
the pace.
Yeah, it's there.
The
and
pace is insane.
so I always hesitate when it's like, well, he doesn't really use his line mates that well, and it's like it's like, what does it mean if a player knows his line mates aren't the most beneficial, and so they try to do too much on their own? Generally, they sort of figure it out. I mean, Cole Sillinger in the NHL has kind of waffled a little bit, but that's, I think, a different story for another day. But I think there's a similar storyline to Trevor Connolly here, because again, like you saw him at the World Junior A's, and I thought he played fantastic there.
He was amazing.
The Holinka tournament, he was the best player in that tournament, probably one of them. And
every time he's against the NTDP.
Yep, the All-American game was also a good performance out of him as well.
Where you got to compare him to Cole Eiserman and watch like how much better Connolly was than Eiserman at almost everything.
Yep. So number 13 is Anton Silayev. Now we're getting into Silai season here. So Anton Silayev, this is a fun one. Same rank, eh? Okay,
Yeah.
so same, and I have him at the same slot in 13. Lucky number 13. What?
That was bad.
I know. But yeah, Anton Silayev is, I don't know, the biggest wild card in the draft, both physically and metaphorically. Like, fantastic skater for a 6'7" player with clunky skill, clunky like pivots and
Clunky everything.
yeah, but he's fluid, very fluid. Loses a lot of physical battles, but it's the KHL, so I guess you can forgive that. Not the best puck mover right now. He can kind of flub his breakouts, and in the data I've tracked, he is one of the most passive offensive transition defenders out there this year. He's just not really like getting that involved. And look, if you watched him play before this season, which I did for a little bit last year because he caught my eye being a 6'7" guy who skated like that. He doesn't score points ever. Like, this is the first year where he's broken 10 points, I think, in a long time, or ever. I don't remember off the top of my head, but last year I think he had like 6 or 7 points. And so it's like, to me, you can tell why. He was scoring a lot of his points early in the year on the power play and off point shots and sort of weird little plays that kind of get him on the score sheet. But when you really watch him, he's, a strong D-to-D passer, sort of keeps things stable and safe, but also he doesn't. But you can see him potentially do that down the road. Like, that's kind of the role he could play while also being a great skater. I'm trying to think of a guy he kind of reminds me of in the NHL.
It's hard.
It's hard.
There's not a lot of guys of this size.
Like, he's look, if he goes like 3rd overall, again, I get it. I can't say that that's a bad pick, but it is. I think there's a lot of risk there based on how, like, relative to Dmitry Simashev last year. I take Simashev 10 times out of 10 over Silayev.
It's
right?
not even a discussion
because there's more skill there. There's more mobility there. He's a better defender. Like, Simashev rubbing guys along the boards and just ending possession was constant, and Silayev just doesn't really have that right now consistently. But I like him. He's a fascinating player, and if I've got him at 12 and he goes 3rd overall and he wins a Norris Trophy, then good for him, right? Like,
He's just not Hedman.
I'm risk averse. So yeah, the Victor Hedman stuff is craziness.
It's got to stop with every tall defender at the top of a draft, guys.
No, there is only one Victor Hedman. Number 12, I don't remember. Oh yeah, Alphonse Frey of Växjö in Sweden. This is a guy who, again, sometimes I'll just have a guy and I'll watch other players around him and I'll bump the other players ahead of him and it'll just bump that guy down. The opposite is happening with Frey. Like, he started the year at like 40 for me or something, and then I watched him once and I went, yeah, no, this is stupid. I need to have him in my first round. And then I watched him again, and then I tracked a game and I went, this guy might be one of the best defensemen available this year, especially for the modern day NHL. And then I watch him again and again and again, and I'm like, this guy rules. Like,
he does everything I want from an offensive and transition standpoint.
If you want like pure excitement in your defensive players, this guy is it. Like, the defensive game, whatever. Like, there are moments where you're like, yeah, this guy is not the best stopper, but
he's not terrible.
He's not terrible. And
which is important.
The benefits for me far outweigh the consequences of that. Like,
he's one of the most gifted passers in the draft, regardless of position.
Ridiculously accurate passer, great vision of the ice. He has that deception to sort of juggle options and move guys out of the way to create lanes.
Handles pressure really well.
Yeah, really shifty. High end skill. I saw him make a play the last time I watched him. He was on the blue. He was at the blue line in the offensive end. He shook a guy off of him and went down to the half wall a little bit, circled back, made a cut, circled back, brought the guy back to the blue line with him, then quickly cut again to go back down the half wall and left that guy behind. Without even looking, it looked like. It was so fast. He just hurled the puck towards the net. Perfect tape-to-tape pass to a guy at the far post, and he just taps it in. Like, tape-to-tape along the ice, perfect pass. Like, it was crazy. Like, the way he sort of creates stuff and the way he gets around, it's really impressive. I can't say enough good things about this guy.
He's got a type of vision where it's like, I'm not even sure he's seeing the players that he's passing to, but he's seeing the defense and how it's shifting. He goes, there's the lane.
Yeah,
and then he just confirms someone's there, like, as he's releasing it, and then just
he lives in slow motion.
Yeah. I watched a play of him just kind of like quickly backhand a puck off a defensive recovery out up to his forehand. He's looking to his left. All of this happens in about half of a second.
Right.
And then he just flick of a wrist, laser beam, tape to tape, basically puts a breakaway on, but the reception kind of, like, the guy flubbed the reception, but, like, a skilled player is catching that and going. It was crazy.
Like, who is he? Like, I'm trying
Odelius is the one that
right
a little bit.
Oh,
not Odelius was absurd at, like, using his gravity to juke guys out. Frey's not trying to do that as much because Frey is trying to push pace up ice and not. But there's bits of his game that I think are most comparable, at least out of recent prospects.
But I mean, like, in the NHL, like, NHL wise.
We don't watch those. We're prospect guys.
Well, hey now, this is an NHL show as well. I'm trying to think of a guy off the top of my head that he kind of reminds me of that, like, it's not just an offensive zone specialist there. Like,
no.
He's a guy who transports the puck really well, plays better defense than you would think, but it's not as good.
It'll be good when he's stronger.
Probably
it'll be fine when he's stronger.
He's one that I didn't expect to have this high, but just kept moving up every time I saw him. Cole Yzerman at 11. He's lower now. I will say this. I tracked a game of his after finalizing my list, and I think he's lower now. Again, he's a guy advertised as a shooter, and I just haven't seen much of that at 5-on-5 in the games I've seen. He's a guy who I thought played pretty well at the All-American game, though. He had his moments of strength and weakness. Couple of really nice shooting opportunities, had a couple of plays that he made that were kind of nice. I don't think he's terrible. I don't think he's a guy who's going to bust out of the NHL, but I do think he's a guy whose role is going to be very limited to a specific role, right? Like, I read Scott Wheeler, who put out a ranking today as well. His write-up on Cole Yzerman was very sort of lukewarm and sort of tepid, and then he ended with, well, he could be a first-line player and a power play weapon. And it's like, sure, but you're going to have trade-offs when you do that with him. Like it's going to, so to me, it's very, it's tricky because he's a guy who I mean, I've seen him try to make a lot of really, really nasty, dirty plays. Like I've seen him, I've seen him go elbows first into guys who see him coming and duck out of the way. I've seen him miss hits just clean. There just doesn't seem to be a whole lot of planning, might be the word. He just kind of is there floating around. Maybe you hit him with a pass, and if you do, he can really take off, right? Like I think people who critique his skating a lot, I think are, over critiquing maybe, but he's not a burner. I don't think the skill level is quite there to make up for that. And when you watch guys, like he's one of these guys, there's a few guys on my list who score a lot of goals and don't have as many assists, and that's usually a problem for me. But some of them it's because the teammates aren't great. But in a lot of cases, it's because there's just not much of a puck distribution ability there. And I think that's the problem with Yzerman, is that the vision and the decision-making and, the off-puck consistency or effectiveness just isn't quite there. And when he does try to play physical, or when he does try to, get involved a little bit there, it's just like, I get what you're trying to do, but like, it's not like, that ain't it, Chief. Like that's not quite it. In my view, but he's a tricky one. I still don't know what to think of him. I don't, but I do know that I don't like him as a top end guy in this year's draft. Like I think a lot of people do.
I think of a specific other Cole who played for the NTDP a few years ago with, Cole Caulfield, and something that is night and day since the Yzerman he's getting the draft pedigree based on the production, especially from a goal scoring perspective, and the numbers are fantastic. And you see like the Caulfield level scoring and the shot and the highlights of his shot. You're just like, wow. Cole Caulfield was an excellent hockey player with immaculate puck control at that
age. Yes, he was.
And he made amazing decisions with the puck that did not involve shooting, and moved really well off the puck to consistently be getting into these spots. If he wasn't shooting, he moved the puck to a guy in space and continued to move really well.
Yeah.
And Yzerman is doing none of that. And as a guy who's watching Cole Caulfield in the NHL, I go, yeah, he needs all of this stuff to work. I mean, it's why he works. It's obviously not a criticism of Caulfield. It's why he works. It's just, I was watching him and I'm like, if he didn't have this stuff, that shot is not keeping him here. He wouldn't be here. It's like, what is he doing? And then I thought about it with Yzerman, and then there was the whole puck prep scout telling me he's the American Colby Barlow thing, and then it's just like he tanked.
Yeah.
He's much further than 11 for me. I was like, I think I'm giving up.
You know what? The American Colby Barlow thing kind of stands out to me. I think he moves a little. I think he moves a little bit better than Colby Barlow, but I see where that person's coming from. So let's get into the top 10 because I don't want to be here until midnight. Andrew Basha at number 10, another guy like Frey who just kept moving up and up and up and up every time I saw him. I thought again he played pretty well at the top prospects game, but he didn't play a ton in that game, I don't think. I mean, probably one of the more electrifying players in the draft. Like if you want a guy who skates really well, gets around players really well, can leave guys in the dust, like the way he wins loose puck races, it's often not even close. He can create plays, he can shoot. I saw the last game I saw of him, he had 3 points, and I swear to God, he could have had 5 or 6. It was ridiculous just how, just how effective he was, especially offensively. And I think there are shades of that sort of William Nylander-esque profile where you might look at his frame and the points and go, well, he doesn't play defense, but he uses the speed he has to at least stick check really well. He forechecks, he tries off the puck. Is he a stopper defensively? No, but you don't draft him to do that. You draft him to be a guy who has enough speed and skill and creativity and offense to get the puck from a defenseman into the offensive zone and then do stuff there. That's his job, and he does it really, really well. And he does pretty much everything that is in that world really, really well. And so for me, Again, a guy who doesn't seem to be ranked in the first round by Central Scouting and doesn't seem to be talked about that much as a first-round pick a whole lot, I don't think. His average is 26 in my tracked rankings, but who knows what that actually means, especially with sort of somewhat undersized, skilled offensive forwards this day and age, slipping a little bit generally sometimes. But I really, really like this guy. Really, really great player. I think there's a lot to like with Basha, and every time I see him, I like him more and more. Number 9 is Artyom Levshunov. I know you are not a fan.
It's not that I'm not a fan. I just don't I don't dislike the player. I don't want him to come across as that. I just I'll save it. May you present your case.
He's terrifying. He has moments that are awesome, right? Like he can push into the offensive zone like a forward. He's a big guy who can move around the ice pretty well. As long as you can play with speed and beat him wide though defensively, or cut inside on him and just try to use speed to get around him, that's where things kind of agility just kind of seems to break him a little bit. And again, it's a defenseman who plays like a forward. Granted, Michigan State does kind of have a more liberal, modern day hippy dippy style of hockey with Adam Nightingale, and maybe Levshunov feeds into that. But I just feel like with Levshunov, I like the tools. He's big and gets around pretty well. You can get him to be a bit stronger. The finishing his checks and the actual erasing of players from the puck, still a work in progress, just like Salayev. But I do think that he's, again, a fascinating player that I don't know what will happen with him. I doubt he's there at 9 anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But I'll be fascinated to see what happens in his career, because honestly, I don't know. There are weak points in his game, for sure. They are there. And they are problems, but nothing is unfixable generally, and we'll just see. I don't know how much he's going to get away with in terms of the offensive style of play he has in the NHL, and that's kind of worrying, because if he doesn't really get that freedom and that ability to play that way offensively, and he also has these defensive weak points, what's he going to be? Are you looking at the next Rasmus Ristolainen here, right? That's kind of my itch that I'm scratching, because when Rasmus Ristolainen was a junior, there was a lot of this sort of playing like a forward style. He had a bit of skill to him. He was big, but he could get up in the offensive zone and play there a little bit, just like Levshunov can. And the defending was not great. And they, Buffalo drafted him and tried to make the defending great, and it just did not work. So I don't know what's going to happen with him. I'll be fascinated, but I don't know. I'm hesitant, I would say.
Same.
Yeah. Number 8, we've got Nikita Artamonov. Yeah, there's your boy. Sam loves this Artamonov guy.
Yes, I do.
I watched him today, actually, and he was okay. Super high motor guy. I think he gets around the ice well enough, especially considering he's playing in the KHL. Again, the offense is kind of not really there when I've seen him. He's a brilliant puck mover. The passing and the vision is really good. But, and today was a bad example because his team did not get out of the defensive end much at all with him on the ice. And there wasn't really much in the way of offense created off his stick. He's not shooting the puck a ton, and when he does, it's not really from scoring areas enough, but the ingredients are there for a really, really talented energy player, which doesn't sound like a player you want to draft in the top 10, but you see signs of a really good player there. You can probably sell him this high better than I can.
I can absolutely sell him this high.
There's I've spoken to a couple of NHL scouts who also see him very, 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 very favorably, and they're licking their lips because they're going, people are going to look at how big he is. They're going to look at, he's not the most efficient looking skater, and they're just going to kind of throw him by the wayside, and maybe we'll get him in the second round or something, because one guy said he has him top 5, and it wasn't Sam. And I was surprised at that, but the way he's wired is super, super high end, and he gets around well, makes really clever plays and really smart plays. If he's up against the boards, he doesn't eat the puck. He tries to find a route to get out of there, or a player who's taking a route to get the puck up the ice. There's just really, really smart plays out of Artamonov.
it's just a matter of, the next step for him, right? Like just the next phase of his development, which is like, like with the puck, we want you to take over shifts a little bit more often, and create a little bit more offense. But that's my read on him. Like, you got him higher.
Yeah, I've got him. I'd say he's a fourth on the list. I'd say fifth because Lindstrom and him flip-flop every 15 seconds in my head. But the thing with Artemonov for me is that he's so ahead of the game that he is playing. Every single viewing, from the very first one I've had to the end of the year, I watched Nikita Artemonov as one of the last guys in the first round. And as soon as I was like 4 shifts in, I was like, nobody is making plays at the
right,
reading the game and making plays within the pace of the game like him. It's not even close, and it's not so much of it is done with off puck play, but he's not an off puck player. He's just so good at understanding where he needs to be. It's the Trevor Connolly thing. He sneaks behind players' blind spots. He times cuts as soon as a defender is going to rotate to cover his teammate coming into the zone. Artemonov goes in, kind of drags the defender in this way, and then he slips back or and delays. There's always something. He's like, okay, I do this, 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 I do this. What is the tiniest little adjustment I can make to get a slightly more advantage? Every time he gets the puck, he's got plan A in his head and plan B as a backup. Rarely is he making a wrong decision. He has skill. He moves well. He's got a weird stride, but I just kind of don't care.
Yeah.
Like, it's not stopping him. The KHL isn't what it was, but it's not a bad league by any means. And 99% of the draft would not be able to do what he is doing right now in that league. It is very few players who can. I love Ivan Demidov to death, and Demidov wouldn't be able to be this in sync with the KHL lineup.
He wasn't.
Right now.
He just wasn't.
He's not capable of it right now. Like, guys who move like this and play like this and read the game like this, they move into the NHL. Everyone's like, well, what about their tools? And what about this? And what about that? And then you look at Zach Benson, and he was just like, well, does any of it matter? Because
that's fair.
Like, he's catching guys off guard all the time and playing with those same advantages. And he's doing so at 18, making a huge jump from the WHL. Artemonov is pretty much doing the same thing in the KHL right now with such consistent, riveting success. It's like, all he's got to do is get a little bit better. And like,
just get more good, kid.
Like, he's not far from the NHL in terms of current level of play compared to anyone else. He's much closer to it in the league he's currently playing in, and he's just. I was trying to make a list of players in the last few drafts who move like him away from the puck, coming from Europe.
Yeah,
and the answer was no one.
Right,
like nobody moves this in sync with the team. If you took him off the line and put other skilled off puck players on, like if you took Consta Helenius on that line, the line falls apart.
Right.
The line does not function. If you put other players on that team, I don't think it functions as well. It's Artemonov's movement within everything that's just this unbelievable glue. So even if he's not touching the puck as much, he is the play driver.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, I don't know how I would put it, but I feel like there's a T-shirt here with the style of player. But again, like you mentioned it, you kind of know that when he's on the ice, when he's in the influence of the puck or ready to make a play of some kind, he's going to make a good play in some way, right? Like especially defensively and getting the puck up the ice and moving pucks really well. My thing is, like, I just haven't seen enough in the offensive zone to really sort of be super, super high on him. But
I've seen some insane plays.
I've seen some really good stuff. It's you're talking top 10 NHL pick, but there has been good stuff. But it's another one of these guys where you watch him and you're like, okay, that was a good one. Yeah, that was smart. That was smart. That was smart. This guy's he looks like he cares. Like, this is smart. That was a smart play. And then at the end of the game, you're like, yeah, he was really good. Like, he was really, really solid. And in the KHL, like playing against grown Russian men, like that can't be easy. Number 7, honestly, I forget. I don't know. Michael Brensek Newgard. I think I did a game of his after this and I moved him down. So he's not this high anymore, but he's still high. Again, I think he's a very projectable NHL player. I don't think he's going to be super, super high end, but a guy who I think has a decent amount of skill, a good shot, a guy who, defensively gets involved in play. He mucks it up. He's physical. Has pretty good pace in his game as well. He kind of reminds me a little bit of like maybe a little bit more skilled Emil Heinemann. Like a bigger guy who gets around the ice pretty well, good shooter like Heinemann was, but there's that next step of like playmaking and finding seams and physical intensity
Not
that
really there.
yeah. Well, yeah. So yeah, I mean with Brandsteg Newgard, I would like, he's been scoring quite a lot since being out of the World Juniors in Hockey Allsvenskan. There's a few guys who have come home, and like Oliver Moore has like 2 points a game or something since the World Juniors, which is insane. We like that. Good for the brand. But yeah, Brandsteg Newgard is a guy who I don't really have a ton to say about him because he's like not the most, like he catches your attention, but it's not for like those like high-end skill moments, right? Like it's more of just a physical game. But he's also a bit lower on my board. Yeah, he's a bit lower now. I think he's in the teens, but still a good pick. Six comes after 7. There we go. We got Zeev Buyam at number 6. I mean, just a very well-rounded, very capable, mobile defender who can defend pretty well, play offensively pretty well. Again, that sort of Alphonse Frey kind of shake guys off in the offensive zone, make space for himself, try to create plays in the offensive zone. It's all good. I've liked Zeev since last year when I was watching him at the NDDP. Again, just a really clever puck mover, passes the puck really effectively, covers ice really well. I can't really point to something that's like, I look at his point production and I go, I don't know if it's like going to be that good in the NHL one day, but I could see how as a power play guy it could work. The guy he kind of reminds me a little bit of is like a Morgan Riley type guy where, Morgan Riley when he was young was not the best defender, and I think Zeev Buyam's a little bit more refined, but just the way he gets around the ice, the way he thinks in the offensive zone and sort of patrols the blue line without stepping up from the blue line too often, is really interesting to me. So Zeev Buyam's at number 6. He was a little higher earlier, but again, like some other guys have just bumped him out of the way. Number 5, we got Adam Juracek, and yeah, hate me if you want. Yes?
I didn't realize he was 5.
Yeah, neither did I, honestly, but here he is.
Holy.
Sad because he's not going to play for the rest of the year, but I'm sticking my neck out a little bit for Adam Juracek. I know what I saw last year, and he was spectacular last year. Every time I watched him, he was great. This year, he was outmatched in Czech Extra League. For sure. You can't really deny that. Passing pucks was not great. The physical, but the physical defense and the stick checking and all of that stuff was really good. But to me, the big thing that that Juracek sets him apart with is the mobility. Like he is an elite, in my view, like an elite 4-way skater. The way he can get from, the way he can sort of skate side to side, backwards. The way he can pivot from forwards to backwards and backwards to forwards, and just do it with the right sort of timing is really, really high end. And like, that's stuff that's hard to learn. And so for me, it's like, also, he was a little outmatched in the Czech league, but like I watched him at the World Juniors for what he was playing. I didn't think he played poorly at all there. And usually guys just don't forget how to play hockey. And so if this is a guy that people kind of brush off a little bit because he's not going to play for the rest of the year and all that stuff, I'll be happy to pick him up late, really late in the draft, or later, and take a swing on him because I think that the skating is high end enough where something's going to work with him, and I think he's got a lot of tools. It's just a matter of honing that vision and that passing ability, because that's the sort of main weakness of his. But I mean, if he gets there, he can really get there. Number 4, unless you have Juracek thoughts, but we can go over them later if you just want to finish the list.
No, we can go through it.
All right. So Ivan Demidov is at number 4. Again, similar to a Juracek. Demidov was a guy who, is frustrating. Certainly in the KHL was outmatched, but definitely does not belong at the MHL level at all. Like, he's almost at 2 points a game, and you can immediately tell why when he steps on the ice. Like, it is so dumb.
It's actually 2 points a game feels low.
Yeah.
When you watch him.
Yeah. It's dumb. Like, he is 2 points a game while being extremely frustrating to watch. Like, you can tell watching him, you're like, I can see why this wouldn't work in the KHL, but goddamn, if he just doesn't it's not simplify the game. It's like
if he stops directly skating at people
Yes.
and trying to stick handle through
Yes.
their stick and legs simultaneously,
Yes.
this guy will be fine. It's the one thing where I watch him do it all the time. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why? You realize if you turned, he can't catch you.
Yep.
He can't do he'll go, oh, and do everything he can to just try and pivot as fast as you change
Yeah.
direction. And you didn't lose speed. You never lost speed. And on top of that, you can just arc. Like Demidov can quite literally skate a circle around some of the slow guys that he will just drive into their chest with no setup for.
Yeah, I agree. It's really crazy. Like but I think that he has like superstar potential. Like this guy could be on Wheaties boxes one day. Like the skill level, the
He's
creativity,
about as high a potential
like,
player I've ever watched.
He's got that. He has that like ting, like that like that diamond sparkle where it's
X-factor,
like that X factor.
This stupid phrase,
where
but
it's,
it works.
Yeah, where it's like, just the way he can, he does the mohawk thing all the time, which is a little bit, it can be useful, but he does it all the time, which whatever. But the way he's able to like he'll skate around the perimeter of the offensive zone in the NHL and no one can touch him. No one touches him. And he'll open up a seam that you could say, yeah, he could thread that through the guy and they could score a goal here. And he doesn't, which is annoying. And then he does it again like 2 seconds later with a different player or something and he doesn't do anything. And you're like, well, and he's like, but he's looking, it seems like he's looking for the highlight. Like it seems like he's looking
always looking for the highlight.
He's looking for how can I show off the most, which is kind of annoying, but it's awesome. Like when he's cooking, the most exciting player in the draft, in my opinion.
Not even close.
Not even close.
He's like he's probably at worst like the third most exciting player since like 2021 or 2020 or something. Like it's so stupid what he can do when he's at his best.
You run power plays through him. He is a guy who you give him the puck on the power play and he will drag penalty kills all over the ice with the speed and the evasiveness he has. 3-on-3
guaranteed zone entry every time.
3-on-3 is not even a question. He's out there 5 straight minutes in the NHL.
He wins it in the first shift.
Yeah, like he's also like an okay defensive player, but not great. But who cares? Like it doesn't matter. Like I don't know who in the NHL he reminds me of.
Kaprizov.
Yeah, like Kaprizov kind of comes to mind. Like
it's this. Demidov's best play was last year. I find this is the most frustrating part is that everything he's so glued to second overall for me by a literal tier. Like he's still a tier ahead of everyone else.
Okay.
Because last year, those seams that we were complaining about that he's not hitting, he hit with ease. He just he would thread the pass. This year he's going for the highlight on literally every play. It's a trend for whatever reason that I'm not going to try and understand because if I know he can make those passes because he has the vision and he has unbelievable vision when he just decides okay, fine, I'll pass this shift.
Yeah.
He will drag 2 guys out and then no look backhand through a guy's leg.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
With such speed and placement that the guy just has his teammates just go, doesn't even have to move his stick.
Yeah.
Like shoot, he just bounces off his stick in the net, and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
So he does it. He can do anything he wants, whenever he wants, and he chains moves around guys like I have never seen a player do. I swear, Bedard on his best day is like the only guy who I've seen just chain moves like this. But Demidov wants to do it on every single play, and when it works, it's like 3 or 4 dudes end up looking stupid. Yes. It's like that. Remember the Tarasenko highlight all those years ago against the Rangers when he just like flew? I'm talking like 2014 or 15. He just like came in the zone and dangles through like 4 guys. Just jukes Lundqvist left. Just barely taps it on right. Demidov does that style of dangle against groups of guys, but with such effortless ease that he probably be able to. I don't even know.
Well, the problem we're gushing about him, but there's a chance. I think there's a chance he like really struggles to like achieve his potential. Because like in the KHL, I watched a couple of games of him with St. Petersburg.
Bad.
He was not effective. Like he was trying to. He didn't even touch the puck that often. I mean, when he did, you saw some flashes of like, okay, yeah, like this is cool, but just like some he's got to, outside the offensive zone especially. I think he just has to simplify. Like, just keep it simple. You got to use your teammates. You got to get up the ice somehow. And he doesn't really have the foot speed to get there on his own. Like it could get there, but he doesn't really have that, escape speed. And he doesn't really have that Liam Greentree style, I can make plays under pressure type of thing. Like he has to be in control. And so you're hoping that in Russia over the next few years and with more and more experience against men, he could sort of adapt to that and get better. Granted, I mean, hey, look what happened to Matvei Michkov when he went to Sochi. Like, I'm just saying.
Like, literally the first shift, you were like, oh, it was a team thing.
Sending Demidov to a KHL team that's like, we'll play him 20 minutes a night, whatever. Like, we don't care. Like, I feel like that could be beneficial because he's not learning anything in the MHL right now. It's just it's a boredom fest. He's so good at that level, he doesn't have to play well, right? To do well. It's crazy. Like, it's crazy. So, anyway, we'll see what happens with him, but
he's
I'm a huge fan.
Absurdly talented that even with all the risk, knowing how reliable Catton and Lindstrom and them are right after, I will take him second. I won't blink about it because I will inherit the risk of him being, not living up to the hype or whatever on the chance that I'm drafting a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
And it would hurt me to pass on him to take Celebrini. I would obviously take Celebrini. Like, that's not a discussion.
Oh, yeah.
But, like, it would hurt me. Yeah. I would sit there and I'd watch another team walk up to the stage and be like, if this works out for you, I'm going to be so mad. Because I think D-1 Demidov still might be the best player I've seen in this draft, including Celebrini.
Yeah.
Like, the best of what he can do is unmatched. It's just unmatched.
If he were at the World Juniors, man, he could have had some stuff where it's like highlight, like he would have been that guy.
All-time highlights.
I mean, Russia might not have brought him because they didn't usually bring 17-year-olds to the tournament.
But we can pick. They're not there, so we can imagine they would have.
We'll just pretend. Yeah, live in a fantasy world. Let's go to the top three. I think the top three is my top tier, so there's three guys at the top for me. I think, Caden Lindstrom is number 3 for me. What could you want more out of a hockey player, really, right? Like, he's a center, 6'5". He's already pretty physically developed, great shooter, skates incredibly beautifully well for a tall guy, gets around the ice really, really well. He plays physical when you need him to.
Unbelievable with his reach.
Yeah, like his only weakness to me really is just like, again, similar to Demidov and similar to Juracek, it's like seeing the ice well, like making the right play at the right time, sort of that next level of thinking to be a more dangerous puck possession guy and a more dangerous playmaker. It's not quite there right now, but that's pretty much it. Like, I don't know what else I can say. Like, the tools are so amazing. Like, at the very end, at the very least, you're going to get a guy who will, score points for you. You can put him out on the power play. He could probably kill penalties. Like, is like Kevin Hayes the floor on him, or like a Blake Wheeler, right? Where it's like, I mean, not even Blake Wheeler. Like, this guy's physical. Like, this guy punishes guys once in a while. I saw him get in a fight, I think, a couple of games ago.
Not sure if it was a fight, but there might have been some fists.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, something like that. But I'm a huge fan of Caden Lindstrom, and I know you are too.
Yeah.
Number 2 is Berkeley Catton. Berkeley Catton rules. What else can I say? The last couple of games I've seen Berkeley Catton play, he was outstanding. Like, just outstanding. Like, there was a 1-day period of my life where I had Berkeley Catton number 1. Like,
really?
Yeah.
Good for you. I had Demidov at 1 for 6 days.
I looked at Berkeley Catton and Cole Eiserman and Macklin Celebrini back to back one day, and I very, very, very much enjoyed Berkeley Catton more. But I just think with Celebrini, the instincts are better. Like, the instincts to project to the NHL, I think, are a little bit better. But Berkeley Catton, like the guy he reminds me of a little bit is like a Clayton Keller, where it's like he gets the puck up the ice absurdly well, whether he has the puck or he does not. He knows where to go. He knows where to be. He takes
what to do.
His pass reception ability is remarkable. He has that next level thinking ability where he can stop up, create gaps, create passing lanes, and sort of, similar to who was I thinking of saying earlier? Like it looks like he's just dumping a pass to nobody, and he tape passes to the trailing forward coming into the offensive zone. Like stuff where you kind of aren't, if you might think initially you're going, I don't know if this is going to work. And then that's what he wanted to do. Like it just that was it. Again, another guy who doesn't really have the best supporting cast, but also like, who cares? Like involvement in 44% of his team's offense is ridiculous. Granted, Connor Bedard was up at 64% last year, but that's Connor Bedard.
Yeah.
So Berkeley Catton, I mean, I suppose I see some of the criticism where he's not the biggest guy. He doesn't have like elite speed, but the whole package that he brings is just ridiculous. Like the brain he has, like he just seems to be a mastermind, to quote Taylor Swift. He's a mastermind, and what if he's a mastermind in the NHL? I just can't.
I think he is a mastermind at the NHL level. It's the Artemonov thing. Like when you read the game with this amount of pace and decision making, and like everything comes across so intentional. When you're like, how did you even set up? I swear you were setting up a different play entirely. Yeah, but that one worked, and it happens so regularly. You're just like, wow. Yeah, huge fan of him. And yeah, he wrestled with number one. So him. Lindstrom and this guy, number one, are in the same tier for me, Macklin Celebrini. So this doesn't surprise anybody. Yeah, EJ Emery, first overall. I like Macklin Celebrini a lot. I really, really do. I don't think he's going to be a world-ending hockey player in the National Hockey League like a Connor McDavid or an Austin Matthews. I don't think he's that. But I think he's going to be a very good NHL center. He has all the right instincts. He does not take poor shot attempts from around the perimeter. He tries to get to the net. He's powerful with his stride. He's a really good defensive forward too. You see him causing turnovers and challenging guys at the blue line. His stick checking ability is great. He can get physical if you need him to. Just a really high-end and well-rounded hockey player. Again, like I think there are other guys that can hold a candle to him this year. But I mean, if I'm going up to the podium first overall, I don't know how you go wrong with a guy like Celebrini, but I also feel like, I don't think he's going to be the best player in this draft when it's all said and done. It's possible. I think it's possible that's the case. Among the top 3 or 4. And the team who took him first will not regret taking him first. Not at all. It's like Nico Hischier, basically. Not like as a stylistic comparison, but like, is New Jersey upset? Absolutely not. Is there arguably better players from 2017? Potentially. Cale Makar, right? Yeah. So with Macklin, so with Macklin Celebrini, it's like, I could see him very easily being a very good NHL player. The problem with me from him is like, he's 5'11", 6 feet tall ish. But he plays the way that like a power forward in the NHL would play a lot of the times when I've seen him. Like he's not super quick, but he's powerful. Like his skating is powerful. He pushes forward with a lot of energy. He wants to push the puck up with that power. He wants to drive to the net. He wants to drive to the middle. And I want to get in a time machine and see if he can get away with that as much in the NHL. I think he could. And if he can't, he also is a great playmaker on top of everything as well. So it's not the end of the world. But to me, it's just like there's a few guys at the top who all I think have either elite high-end talent and great vision and all this great stuff, and maybe just a few tweaks you need to make, or you're just kind of crossing your fingers that certain things get better. And then Macklin Celebrini's kind of there as like just a really well-rounded guy with the right instincts. He's wired the right way. And could be at least a difference maker in the NHL, like a needle moving guy who can score and can play off the puck pretty well.
So yeah, I like Macklin Celebrini, but I feel like I might be a little more tepid on him than most people.
His one-timer's awesome.
Yes, that's also true. He's a awesome one-time boy. So that's it. That's the top list. That's the top 32 of the list.
Where's Luke Osborne, huh?
So yeah. So what I'm curious about, I want to have a little discussion now and include you a little more. So who in your heart of hearts did you want to put in your first round, but didn't? Because I'm displaying my blog post that is now up, and this is the remainder of Tier 4. While you're searching for that, I'll just throw out mine. I would say Dominic Badinka, Beckett Seneke, and maybe Matvei Shuravin are guys that I kind of felt like deserved a first round rank, but I just this range is so close to me that like I don't know. And like Carter Yakimchuk, I saw a couple questions about him. I like him. I like the skill level he's got, but he's really rough around the edges to me. The defending is an issue. Think like more confident offensively in terms of Zane Perrick, but like a little bit better offense, but also not quite. I don't know. It's hard to explain. But with Yakimchuk, I just haven't seen the guys ahead of him. I just like a lot, and don't see as many rough parts of his game. But Yakimchuk probably should be higher. But I don't know. Who are you throwing in there?
Badinka's a good one. I'm really starting to grow on him. I know a couple other people on Twitter have been talking about him as well, which made me revisit him because I had been outdated in viewings and was like, all right, I see it. I need to watch some more. This is the first time ever my tier break actually ends at 32.
Hey,
This is the first time I've ever had a tier break work at the end of a round. I was like, wow, how convenient.
So your answer is nobody then.
Oh, well, no, I wouldn't say nobody. The top guy in my second round is your boy, Tobias Heinonen, because I have also started to really like him. I love Kamil Bednarik. I don't think he should, like, he's not someone you want to be a first round player, but then every time I watch him and then I see other guys, I'm like, man, you are just awesome.
He's fun. Yeah.
Jet
Lutchenko, yeah.
Thank you. That was a whiff.
He's also a good one. Yeah.
He's got, when he's schmoovin' and the evasive game is all there, I'm like, man, I'm a big fan, and you've got some that fluidity, but there's some inconsistencies throughout it where I'm less sold.
Yeah.
I'd say those guys, I have them lower, but I adore Adam Kleber.
Oh yeah, Adam
just a
Kleber's pretty
6'5" rock star defender.
I think he's my top
like,
tier 5 guy.
With like good hand. He's one of the top guys in the tier.
And there's your boy Luke Osborne. So there you can stop yelling at me about him.
And I put Luke Osborne in the first, so like I didn't have to deal with that one because that would have been the answer.
Hot takes here, but yes, I mean, I would agree with all
love
that.
it if Cole Hudson was like I was Mr. Lane Hudson. I loved Lane Hudson. It was like all year long from like this
day one.
April of the year before. I was like, yo, this guy's a monster. It's brother does not give me the same vibe, but I want to be that way because, of course, the fun. And I don't think he's a first-round guy, but just because I absolutely love him. I love John Whipple. I like John Whipple a lot.
Sam is in love with John Whipple.
I really like John Whipple's game. He's the best type of, I don't notice this dude when I watch him.
Yeah, that's true.
He's just the best
But he
version.
just does stuff.
He's one of those guys where I feel like if you ask a lot of the USHL players, like, who's someone who's really, like, annoying to play against? The guys are just going to be like, John Whipple.
Yeah.
He pisses me off because he's just so fluid and good and skilled. I started to underrate him because he was something exceptional. Like, he was an aggressive, skilled guy just like a year and a half ago, a bit over a year ago.
Yeah.
And then the NTDP didn't place him in that role. So he just was like, all right, fine. I'll just be a stud defender with great puck control who can just make really quick decisions at pace and make sure guys struggle to deal with me. And then he did it.
Right.
So
fair enough.
The adaptability in Whipple's game makes me a big fan.
Yeah. I'm going to throw y'all have to remember who sent you on this, but I'm curious what the public's opinion of Fyodor Avramov is. Kapitan Stupino is a team in Russia playing junior hockey in Russia. I love Fyodor Avramov. I think he's so fun. He's like a 6'3" winger playing there. He's like over a point a game. Just a guy who goes out there and makes good plays all the time. Wicked shot, just an unreal shooter. Highly recommend him. I don't know if he would end up in my first round, but I've really, really liked him the more I've seen him.
Galvis was one more, but we already talked about him
Yeah.
earlier. I really like Lucas Van Vliet. He's not a first-round guy under any circumstances, but I like him. And Linus Eriksson is the only.
Dude, yeah.
I
like Linus. Yeah.
I remember watching Eriksson last year in his very first game when he moved to J20, and I was like, wow, he's not doing anything,
Yeah.
but he's so close. Like, he's just half a step away from play all the time, and I feel like he's going to do some cool stuff. And now he's kind of starting to do some cool stuff.
Yeah. Really smart. Gets around the ice pretty
Yep.
well. Like, just a really good dude to have up the middle of the ice. I did the math, and we disagree the most on Artyom Levshinov, Tanner Howe, Emil Hemming, Ryder Ritchie, and Adam Juracek. So Ryder Ritchie for me is ranked low. I've got him at 56. You have him, I think, in
I
the
moved
first
him up
round.
considerably. Like,
I have to watch him again,
considerably
but
recently
I haven't been sold on
I
him
had
at
some
all.
games sent to me where people were like, these are the better games, which I went and I watched. I came away going, okay, I see it, but I'm not 100% sold. The skill level when it works is awesome, but I find he's mostly popping people out of the seats when I'm watching defenders who are asleep at the wheel. Like, I've seen moves. I saw a move of him like dangle through like 4 guys, but 3 of them were basically an assigned watcher. And
Yeah.
then the last guy was like, eh! And just like not moving his feet and poking his stick out. And Richie
Yeah.
just kind of like got through all of them. And I was like, all right, well, that was sick, but how did that work?
Yeah.
And then the rest, I feel like you can see the details of his game kind of come together to be like a skilled bottom 6 guy, and there's just enough actual skill there, and the skating is fine enough where I can see him actually becoming a pretty solid, better than you'd think NHLer. But he
Right.
frustrates me a lot. He wasn't someone that I was expecting to have in the first round. Yeah.
I just don't think he projects super well. Like, I just don't. Like, he's a smart offensive guy. He gets the puck to the middle of the ice. Like, to me, he's like Luke Misa, but without the skating ability, which to me is like a tough call. Like, he started the season red hot and cooled down significantly. Now he's under a point a game, and I watched him play, and part of it is he doesn't have many finishers on his team, I think. But part of it also is like, I don't think the pace of his game is super great. I don't think he's particularly agile. I think he applies the skill level he has really well, but I just, for the projection's sake, I don't really know how I feel about him, and so he's just been bumped down my list because I think other guys ahead of him, I just, like a Charlie Ellick or Stein Solberg or Carter Yakimchuk or Jet Lachenko, like those guys I think pop a little bit more than Ryder Ritchie does.
I think when all is said and done, Richie at 29 or whatever he is right now is the peak he will be.
Right.
I do not see him being a first rounder for me by year's end. But when I was trying to sort everything out, like if you said right now, do you like Ryder Ritchie or Dominic Badinka more? I'd say probably Ryder Ritchie. Or sorry, probably Dominic Badinka.
I was going to say, I was about to throw you out of my house.
Say probably Dominic Badinka. I just need to see more of him to understand how I can argue that before I go and make somebody a first round pick.
Right.
Which is why Badinka is currently just like a high second round person.
Yeah. Badinka eats his lunch and then gets the puck off of him and then leaves him behind. Like, that's what happens if you're one-on-one with Ryder Ritchie, I think, if you're Dominic Badinka.
I just feel like Ritchie,
But
in that thought experiment, I agree. I just feel like I can see Ritchie playing in the NHL, even if I liked what you said about he's Luke Misa without the skating, but I think it's hard to explain why I think it works. It does work. It's not working in an exciting way. And the first round is almost based on the idea that he does get a little bit faster. If you tell me he doesn't, it's like,
right.
Okay. Well,
I mean, he will. You would think so. I don't know.
He
Again,
doesn't have the same safety as like a Tanner Howe, who I can
Yeah.
absolutely see playing in the NHL. You
Yeah.
can see exactly the role he's going to play. You can see how he's going to assist his shots and stuff like that in the offensive zone. He's not a play driver, but he just does enough of the detailed stuff that you kind of want from a player in your third line where it kind of works. Again, a
Yeah.
dude who I think stays in the first. I think Howe has more staying power than Richie does.
I don't know what I think of Tanner Howe, honestly. I've got Howe lower than Richie. I just have no idea. Like I don't think either of them project super well to the NHL, but with Tanner Howe, like the energy level is there. I like the energy he brings. But I think Richie just brings a better map of the ice maybe and sort of a more practical application of what he has. I don't know. But neither player really like rocks the boat for me that much. Considering who else is quite high on my board. So the players that wait a minute, why did I write those names down? Yeah, I don't know what that means. Let's skip that. But the players the players that so what I did was I averaged Sam and I's list and I compared it to the average of the lists that I track. The players that we are highest on relative or disagree with the world most, both good and bad. So players that were higher on relative to everybody and lower on relative to everybody. I noted Alphonse Frey, Teddy Stiga as the guys that were by far we were highest on. I remember doing this. I don't remember the last thing I had in the notes, but this I remember. We definitely love Frey and Stiga together more than pretty much everybody. And Ryder Ritchie, Cole Hudson, and Aaron Kiviharju are guys that both of us on average have quite a lot lower. And I'm sure that average on Ryder Ritchie is brought down by me having him like 20 spots behind you. But Hudson and Kiviharju definitely makes sense, I would think.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Cole Hudson, we were just talking about the difference between Lane and Cole. I think it was yesterday or the day before. And like
Right.
Lane Hudson was someone who, with every touch of the puck, he was looking to progress the game forward. And because he was so good at doing this, he could use those types of plays to set up fakes, feints, draw people in, and just make those awesome, like, wow, he really blew the defense apart with that pass. Like, they were really scrambling to kind of make up that space.
Right.
Hudson, wait, I can't say it that way. They're both named Hudson. Cole has the issue where he gets the puck and he wants to do the highlight first, and then if he can't do it, then he's like, all right, fine, I'll move the puck well here. There's some games where I watch him, I'm like, hey, he's playing within the pace of the team better here. Not like Lane, but he's still doing better. And then there's other games where I'm like, he's trying so hard for a highlight right now. He's got weaker tools than his brother. He's even spookier. Like, Lane was a smart defender. He just had issues where you're like, due to physical traits. Cole spooks me defensively.
Yes, big time.
Like, straight up
Big
spooks
time.
me. And I don't think Cole Hudson is an elite transition player. To the
He's a
extent,
good one.
He's a good
but not
one,
what he
but-
needs to be.
yeah,
don't
and
think.
Lane was an elite, if anything, decision maker in transition. It's I want to, right? Like,
I know.
I love Lane Hudson. I was such an advocate for the guy for so long.
Yeah.
And I enjoy watching Cole, but when I'm doing so, I'm like,
Yeah. I very much agree. And with Kiviharju, I just again, like,
he's
I
just
did
a
not
passer.
I did not like him at the beginning of the year this year, and I just kept moving him down because other guys were playing and I enjoyed them more, and I have never been a huge Kiviharju guy. But I am curious. When he comes back, I will watch, and sure, he could end up much higher on my list, but I gotta go off of what I've seen of him over the years, and I am. So the last thing before we bang through some chat questions, unless you have to get up and run. All right. Well, I wanted to bring up some of the guys that we left unranked. And I'm curious as to why that is and so these are the guys that are ranked pretty much by everybody, but aren't even on our list, like not even on my watch list. So for me, it's Maxime Massé, Henry Muse, Tarek Parasak, Leo Saline Wallenius, and EJ Emery. And for you, it was Matvei Shuravin, Maxime Massé, and EJ Emery. So, I mean, do you want to tackle the ones that we both had on there first? Like, Maxime Massé, I just watched him again to make sure I wanted to put him on this list.
Yeah.
I don't know what I see out of him.
I don't really like. What is he going to do in the NHL? And that's my honestly I feel like that's the
Checking
question.
forward, maybe like a checking forward, maybe. You know,
Yeah.
maybe. I just, again, so many more players interest me that play with more pace, with more skill, more like he's a guy who, if you're a kind of coach who would rather your wingers just chip it up the boards and chase it into the neutral zone and win a physical battle, chip it into the offensive zone, win a physical battle and gain possession, and have a guy just grind the puck out and put it in front of the net, sure. But like when I look at Maxime Massé, I think of Nathan Gaucher a couple of years ago and how much more I liked Nathan Gaucher as a potential checking forward in the NHL. Like I thought where Gaucher was drafted was completely out of control, but I do think that with Massé, you're getting a similar guy who wants to play a similar type of hockey, but just is not on the same level in terms of speed and physicality and everything. I don't know. And then at the top prospects game, I didn't think he really moved the needle much, like at all. Or was he hurt? I can't remember if he was one of the guys that was injured. But point is, I watched him recently just to see if I was sure I didn't want to rank him. I didn't see much.
I pretty much am on the same board with him.
A lot of the same things you could maybe say about EJ Emery. Like, I'm not a very exciting player.
See him as a guy who just, like, I don't think he's ineffective by any means at this level. I just see him as a guy who just takes what's in front of him and then does what's in front of him. And that's fine. But, like, what's that going to
boring.
do
It's boring.
in the NHL? What's his elite tools?
Yeah.
Like, what's he, like, he's got tools, I guess, in theory, but it's in theory. Like he doesn't really use them. Like how much work do you have to do to sculpt him into an NHL third pairing number 6D? Probably not that much, but getting him anything beyond that is going to be kind of tricky. And I still don't even know. Like, why do you want him as your number 6D? It's like, okay,
because you can.
Because he does, like, he recognizes when there's an open lane there and he's supposed to pass through it. Okay, sure.
Like, can he go out and eat minutes in the NHL one day? I guess, right? Like, he's whatever, right?
I feel like I can just find him off waivers.
It's a philosophical thing, I think, for us, where it's like in the draft, you kind of want to find stuff that's hard to find. And with EJ Emery, I just find it's like, there's a lot of guys like him in the NHL, and I don't know which. Like, and also this is also I've seen him in the first round here and there, and that just seems to me to be, you know, like I can see why, because he's big. I think there's room for physical development, and he's safe, right? Like he doesn't take too much responsibility or risk, I should say. He kind of keeps it simple, whatever, but I don't really aim for that, right? Like if that's your target, then there's 40 other dudes you could probably target in this year's draft as well, or in free agency, who will play that sort of defense first, simple, effective game. So I don't know. Henry Muse is on my list of guys I didn't have ranked. I did have him ranked for a while, but he's a guy who is all brain. That's all he is to me. Like, the tools need to come so far to really become as impactful in the NHL as he could be. Like, he's not the biggest guy, and he gets beat defensively a lot. He moves the puck well, like his passing vision, and he makes good plays quickly and often, which is fine, but only through his passing, really. His skating is okay, but not great. The offensive game, I see moments where I like him, and do I think he's a guy that I don't draft ever? No. But if people are talking about him like he's a first round pick, I don't see that. I don't know where that comes from, unless you go, we really value how a player thinks, and the development part is all about their on ice talent, and maybe you'll get something out of them that way. Which, sure, fine, but to me, there's guys who are further along in that area that you might want to point yourself at. Where did you have Muse? I forget. Do you have it?
44, because I did a viewing shortly before posting, and it was like, this is his best one this year. Okay. And we're like, it's all right. It's
real,
not.
Real endorsement.
I liked Muse before the year started, and I feel like those who do keep giving Muse a longer leash were part of that. Like, we watched him a fair bit before the year. We really liked what he had going for him, and kind of expected more. And maybe I saw more of what I was expecting, and I went, oh yeah. Realistically, though, 44, like I wrote in my rankings, like the second round for me is broken into like, these are the guys who I'm pretty sure are going to be in my second round at the year's end. And then these are the guys who I have not a goddamn clue on yet.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to figure it out. But like, I kind of like a lot of guys in that second tier are going to end up passing guys in the first tier. Muse was placed pretty much at the bottom end of the first tier, so 44, 45-ish, by default of like, you're kind of what I'm looking for with that game, knowing what I know you have, but this is more so of a placeholder spot because it's January, and
We'll see.
We'll see as the list expands.
Someone also commented that he's right-handed. That definitely works in his favor as well, for sure. Being right-handed, as we all know, is great. Who was I watching? Was it
no-handed?
No, it was I think it was the All-American game where one team had all right-handed defensemen. I was like, okay, we've gone too far. Now left-handed defensemen are the ones we need to look for. It's crazy. Anyway, I also saw the comment about Jesse Pulkkinen. I actually just tracked my first game of him this morning. He's still terrifying. He's terrifying. I don't know why he's in the first round. I saw someone's board where he's in the first round. The NHL Central Scouting seems to think he's a top sort of ish round guy, a couple rounds. I just don't think that's
less than zero interest.
I am curious. I'm curious if it's like a 4th or 5th round pick or something, and you have 3 or 4 guys that you're super excited about. The skill level is curious. He's super confident, but Pulkkinen is scary. He's a scary player. I think he gets by simply because he is so tall and lanky. And he is so confident, but he's really rough around the edges, to say the least. And he's an 04.
There's so much that has to go right.
There's a lot that has to go right with him. But anyway,
he's a 2004.
Yeah, he's an 04.
05.
No, he's a late
That's
04.
Even...
He's like a November 04. He's gonna be 20 in November. Yeah. So I don't know. I get it, but I don't want it. Yeah. I've got Tarek Parasak on my guys I don't have ranked because I just don't think he's particularly effective, especially projecting him to the NHL.
He won't be.
I just don't see it. Not super quick, not physical at all, doesn't really do much defensively, doesn't even do much in offensive transitions at all. Like, if Andre Becker weren't on the Prince George Cougars right now, or Riley Height weren't on the Prince George Cougars right now, like if Tarek Parasak is on the Prince Albert Raiders, he'd probably be finishing for Ryder Ritchie and would not be as highly scoring as he is. He's also cooled down quite a bit since the first quarter of the year, I think. And so I don't know. With Parasak, I don't see it. I know you have him ranked, but
I have him ranked due to the reason I guess Sasha Postujov got ranked a few years ago. But I was not a fan of.
I'll take Postujov every day.
Yeah, but like that's kind of where I'm coming from, I guess, with this one. I'm one of those ones where it's like it's a January list where the second round wasn't nearly as looked at, or like the 50 to 60 dudes I was looking at to decide the 34 in the or 32 in the second round were not looked at with the near the level of consideration that the top 32 were.
It's okay. I'm not coming at you. It's fine. It's okay to have Tarek Parasak ranked.
Is it?
Well, I can't say no.
I mean,
anything is possible.
Like, I don't like having a player in a position like that and then going, well, what do you have about him there? And it's like points.
Yeah, points.
Like,
points. No, not for me.
I like Riley Height.
Yeah, the last one I do want to say is just Leo Salim Melanius. Again, a guy I watched today to be sure. I don't see it.
Really? I've actually seen a couple of games where I'm like, all right, you're doing stuff. I don't think he's like he's not spectacular.
the fact that he's in the same conversation as Alphonse Frey, if not seen as better, is mind-boggling. That is mind-boggling to me.
That one. You can just go with like Noel Franzen or something like that.
Yeah,
it's like you can't.
I could see Wallenius being on my list by the end of the year. Like, he wasn't awful in the game I did today, but it's like he's a clunky skating guy, I think, who doesn't really pivot all that well to cover defensively. He wasn't really challenged all that much defensively in the game I saw. His shot isn't great. It's just I wasn't very excited, and I have never been watching him. I think the World Junior A's was really interesting because I thought Alphonse Frey played awesome in that tournament, and I never noticed Salim Wallenius, like a little bit, but not really.
Though.
Like, I liked Viggo Gustafsson more. I liked Viggo Gustafsson if we're talking random Swedish defenseman that you could maybe snag. He seemed more interesting, but that's the only other one I wanted to mention that was unranked that most people have. Well, we can rifle through some questions if we have them, because I saw a couple of good ones fly by. Someone Ray says he's only here for you. Most improved prospect could mean a million things, so I don't know what that means. That'll
be a good question at the end of the year.
Yeah, I'm glad for Scott Prunovich doing well in St. Louis. I actually watched the Blues the other night and thought he played really well. I've liked Scott Prunovich quite a bit. I think he got hurt, though, and I don't know. I could be wrong.
Green Tree can get inside the top 10, but I'm not sure if it's going to happen. But like he's been positioned at 10 for me at some point this year.
I want him to be there. I think that if all goes right, I think he could be one of the best NHL players in the draft. Like, the resilience, the strength, the play under pressure, it's all great.
He's got a man's game.
He's got a man's game. That's true.
Really, like, it's actually and Tanner Adams worth the mid-round pick. I don't know if mid-round pick. I
watched a bit of him this year.
Austin, I'll get back to you. Yeah. I need to go back and.
He's all right. We've
talked Adams a lot in the past. So
yeah.
I'll get you an updated.
He's
answer.
been very good. No Carter Yakimchuk in your first round is going against the grain. What are your thoughts on the player? Yeah, so Yakimchuk is at like 40 for me, but I will say he was very good at the top prospects game, I thought. He had some rough moments, but he also had some exciting moments. He's at 44. But to me, again, it goes back to if I'm drafting a defenseman, if they need to be able to defend at a high level, and I just don't see that out of Yakimchuk right now. And he's also not the best puck mover up the ice. Once the puck is in the offensive zone, he's great. Like, he's got a hard shot. He's got a lot of skill standing still. He's confident. The things he tries to do are great. He kind of reminds me a little bit of like a better skating Jesse Pulkkinen, where there's going to be moments where you're like, oh, I don't know. But then the puck gets on his stick and he pulls the skill out of his bag, and then you're like, whoa, okay, this guy could have some highlight reel moments. But for me, watching full games and multiple games of him, I don't know what he's going to be. And, will he be in my first round at the end of the year? Like, he's in a tier that stretches all the way to, I don't remember where, like in the 20s. So it's not crazy to suggest that he should be there. But the guys ahead of him, like, I like Matvei Shervin more for a sort of defensive-leaning guy who can play defense. Jet Lachenko, Kamil Bednarik. Emil Vinny's a great goalie. Credit to David Phillips for highlighting that. I really like Emil Vinny. Linus Eriksson, just a really well-rounded guy. I don't know. Where do you have Yakimchuk? 30. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's reasonable. I think that's fine.
The one person, so Richie and Howe were already kind of floating in this area. One person, I had a great conversation with our Puck Preps director of scouting, Mr. Joel Henderson.
There you go.
I was going to say Mr. Carter Yakimchuk. That's why I paused.
Well,
about Carter Yakimchuk, who actually managed to sell me on an argument to move him up into the first round and bump. I think it ended up being Hemming who was bumped down, and then I ended up getting a little softer on Hemming towards the end. Anyways, and he's not the type of player that I'm actively looking for, but I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge what he provides and how it can fit in even with my preferred style of play from my defenders. I think that ended up being like quite the mature read from Mr. Henderson.
Right. Someone mentions that they heard Mustard's dad unalived someone in the conservatory with a candlestick. That's a good comment. That's great.
Me too.
Yeah. I haven't played Clue in a very long time, and I really should, or at least watch the movie. Great movie, by the way, the Clue movie. I swear to God, I'm not even joking. It's really good. It's really fun. Have you seen Alexander Pleskovsky? No.
No. I've been trying to pronounce that in my head for the last 10 seconds. I'm like, I'm not saying it.
I'll write him down. Actually, the name seems familiar. Let's see if the link is purple. Oh, it's not. Monteugri. I've seen this team a few times. All right, well, sure. Berkeley Catton's highest potential. Well, I compared him to Clayton Keller. Messiah. I compared him to Clayton Keller, and I think I could stand with that. I could see it, but I just think he could be an electrifying, brilliant offensive guy who gives you a good effort defensively. He's great. What's Easton Cowan's highest potential and what's his floor? I mean, he's probably going to play. He's a hardworking dude. Middle six maybe guy. I could see third line, really good third line, solid second line guy, something like that.
Fair.
Is Ghost a comparable for Parekh? I personally think Ghost gets around the ice. Ghost Bear gets around the ice better.
Yeah.
I think he just gets around the ice better than Parekh. Mobile and fluid and fast. I think that's Gostis Bear, and I don't see that in Parekh. This is a good one. With an example of Ustinkov and Heinonen, how do you gauge projectability for guys who play few minutes compared to those who play a lot? How do you tell who strives with positive or negative ice time, or whatever, survives, whatever?
I think specifically with those two players that you use, Ustinkov and Heinonen, it's just you can just see it in the short ice time.
Yeah,
they're doing the right thing, and you're just kind of the game ends, and you're like, they didn't get more minutes or something like that. You look up and it was like one shift, second period, 15:03. Next shift, third period, 6:01. You're like, why? He didn't do anything wrong. What is wrong? Like, those situations are the ones where it kind of becomes easier to judge. There are a lot of other ones where you're just like, I don't know. I'm not working with the best sample. They're deploying the player kind of interestingly.
Yeah.
He's not really getting a lot of chances. Like, there are situations like that come up.
Yeah, I think my answer is similar. The player still is involved in the game, right? It's, and you sometimes you don't get enough out of a player. Like, I just watched a game of Herman Truff in the SHL, and he just wasn't around the puck enough, and it wasn't, but there were moments where you kind of go, okay, now I know that this player can do this. Like, the thing at the level like that I'm looking for is, are they overwhelmed? And you can tell that pretty quickly, generally, especially with defensemen. And when they have the puck, what happens? Like, if they never touch the puck, that's one thing, right? That can be difficult. But I don't think I've ever tracked a game where that happens. Like, I don't usually track games unless a player plays at least 7 or 8 minutes, because below that, they're only playing 6 or 7 shifts, and that's not helpful. But there seems to be a bit of a sweet spot to go a little higher than that. And so when I see guys that don't play a ton of minutes, they're still playing. They're still involved in the game. They're still touching the puck. They're still having to play defensively. They're still having to keep up with the flow of play, and all of that stuff can factor in. So sure, you get a smaller sample, but at least for me, with tracking data and everything, I'm still paying attention to every second that they're on the ice, and every second they're on the ice matters. And even if they play 8 minutes, that's 480 seconds, right? Count to 480. How much can you get done in the time it takes for you to count to 480, right? A lot, probably. Maybe not, I don't know, depends on who you are, but sure, you could do quite a bit, So it's like maybe I don't know how good I am or how good someone else is at cleaning their house when all I get to see is how they vacuum the floors. But at least I know that they're doing a good job vacuuming. So the rest of the picture should, hopefully, if I spend more time watching them, I'm hopefully seeing more of other stuff that I want to see, and then I know who is good at cleaning a house.
Immaculate answer.
Something like that, Or maybe they're cleaning one floor of their house, vacuuming one floor. They clean one floor, and the rest of the house is still dirty, but they did a really good job on floor one. It's okay, well, yeah, the rest of the house may be a mess, and they might botch it, but it's cool. This is fine so far.
Any thoughts on Terrence Smith? I saw that one.
I think he's fine.
I
he's-
don't really want to
Yeah.
comment overly too much, but I will say I did a viewing of him, and I was put into a very last minute situation where I was about to post, and I had 63 players.
So you threw him in there.
No, I took him. He's the one I took out.
Oh boy.
I watched him, and I was like, this is probably the same for a couple other people here. I need to really figure this part of it out, but I can't justify ranking him right now. He's just not someone I've seen him a couple times. I'm just like, I just don't really care.
Yeah. I think this is talking about Yzerman, potential attitude issues with Yzerman.
There's talk.
There's chatter, but like not,
It's not like some.
yeah. It's like, it's more that like there's, you can tell when he's on the ice. He can sometimes be annoying to watch, like can sometimes be very frustrating. So put yourself in the shoes of someone that's on the team, right? Like it may be a bit frustrating to with how he plays the game, but you know, I don't think it's anything that like ruins his career or anything. It's just a hurdle, I think. What's the hype on Noel Franzen? So yeah, he's 34th on my list. I'm surprised. I don't know what's going on, why he's not ranked by Central Scouting at all.
Was he completely?
Yeah,
omitted?
completely off.
That's
great attacking defenseman. I think he's an okay defender, but not great at it, which is not what you want. But he's evasive. He gets up the ice well. He fakes guys out, cuts down the half wall, challenges guys offensively quite a bit. You know, maybe not the best shooter, but he gets his chances, and I that's about as high as I think I'd put him. There are guys below him, like maybe Seneki, Shuravin, Grath, Bednarik, Luchenko. All those guys I could see ahead of him at the end of the year based on what I've seen, because also I haven't seen Franzen in a while. But I mean, I certainly think he should be in the mix, and if he's a guy that's a person you get in the 6th or 7th round, you may as well take the swing. I don't know. Are there many players from the queue on your list? Who do you think would go highest? Well, Maxime Massé, I imagine, is going to go first, right? I don't know who else in the Quebec League is there. But for Quebec, I only have Kiersey ranked, I think.
What are the odds that someone in the NHL is high on Poirier?
Justin Poirier. Oh, I've got Eric Smateko ranked now. I forgot about that. I saw him today. Threw him on the list, but not super high. What are the chances someone in the... Wait, sorry, what did you ask me?
Poirier. Like somebody... I don't think a lot of
Maybe.
NHL teams would be... But I think...
Maybe later, right? Like, I could see it, but I don't... I don't know. Like, what are you going to get out of him? Like, he moves his...
the goals.
He moves his feet and shoots from everywhere. Like, he kind of reminds me of a Justin Cote from a couple years ago. Remember him? Like,
yeah.
Moved his feet a lot, shot the puck a lot from everywhere, and scored goals. Like, that kind of is what I see out of him.
Did Michael Hagg's injury hamper his transition into the USHL?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
For sure.
Do
Yeah.
you think that's why you're not the level? I mean, he is at that level now, unless you're talking about the way he was. Like, when Puck Preps was looking at him at first, back when he was like 15, 16, this dude was like he was like 5th or 6th on their board. Like, he was a rock star.
Yep.
He is really, really, really good still. It just goes to show how high end of a player he was beforehand. And I think, considering the major thing people are commenting on is the fact that he just want him to be faster, it's like missing an entire year of physical, like he couldn't develop his skating the way that other players did, and he's still caught up with them. I think he's been hampered to an unfortunate amount, but I do not think it will stop him on his path to the NHL, and I hopefully he just makes full progress and just like catches up skating wise. And I mean, he's not a bad skater by any means. I don't want to make it seem like he is.
Is Jake Gardner a comparison for Carter Yakimchuk? I mean, maybe. I don't think he skates as well as Jake Gardner did. Jake Gardner was a hell of a skater. Maybe, I mean, if we're going with that era of the Toronto Maple Leafs, maybe a Cody Franzen might be more apt. You know, skilled offensive guy, but yeah, off the rush and defensively, you kind of want a little more out of him. To clarify on comments on Demidov, it reminded me of Zherdev. Thoughts? Yeah, I mean, there are universes out there where Ivan Demidov does not turn out to be what he could be, right?
Yes.
Nikolai Zherdev, when you read about it or what happened there, it was just a failure on like so many fronts. Like, so yeah, I mean, I think interviewing Demidov and like challenging him a bit and pushing some of his buttons might tell you a lot about the type of player you're getting. But God, like if it works, he's a superstar. Like if it works, which it might not, he could be the highest point producing player in this draft. And like the guy you want when you need a goal, right? Probably. Maybe Celebrini's in there, but yeah. It's a short list if it's not him. Okay, we can end on this one. Thoughts on my innate ability to watch hours of MHL hockey without psychological effects? Have you?
You don't understand that you actually do have some psychological effects.
That's a good point. You definitely have psychological issues right now.
You just don't understand it yet.
But I also will say, have you considered starting your own cult or monastery or something where you tell people the way that you gained the ability to do something like that? Because like imagine the potential of people in traffic. Like if I had the types of patience and wherewithal if I had the wherewithal to have that mentality, I would love to have it in traffic, for example, or something. But in any case, good on you. Good for you, but goodness gracious, that can be a challenge. So I guess we'll call it there. It's been 2.5 hours. I think that's enough. Took a little while to get through my list, longer than I thought, but that's okay. Sam, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for
Before we
having me.
go, I did want to mention one thing. I saw an ad for this and I watched it the other night, but if you haven't seen, and this is great for this audience, but if you have Amazon Prime, go on Amazon Prime Video, and watch the Alexander Daig documentary. It's only 45 minutes long, so it's like a mini-series thing, but it is primo. It is awesome. Like the first 40 minutes of the 45 minutes are incredible. I think it falls apart at the end when it gets into his comeback and his time with Minnesota and all that stuff, where he was actually good for a while, but it really dives into the psychology of hockey players and especially like the culture around hockey and the way that it can not only
skew development,
but also overwhelm children, and also the culture of hockey being very anti-fun. Like the documentary, like one thing about Alexander Daig that is out there about him is that his attitude sucks. But upon reflecting as an older man now, he's like, well, when at that age, when I said all that crazy stuff in the media, I barely knew how to speak English. And the way I talk in French is very, not aggressive, but like like relaxed and very sort of like, I have fun with the way I talk, but I didn't know how to properly do that in English. So the media took what the things I was saying from face value and saying I had a bad attitude or something. And everybody was talking about how he liked fast cars and rumors about dating Pamela Anderson and all this stuff. And he's just like, can't comment on any of that stuff. But like, I just was a young kid who had a lot of money and was having fun, and everybody seemed to hate it. So it's like, what do you do? It's like if Alexander Daig were alive, if he were playing now, he's alive. But if he were drafted right now, I feel like his career would have gone significantly differently. The craziest, I'll end on this. The craziest part of that, it's after he gets traded from Ottawa to Philadelphia to play with. The big thing he mentions is I get to play with John LeClair. I get to play with Eric Lindros, Rod Brind'Amour, all these legendary Philadelphia Flyers, and which he did not have in Ottawa. Ottawa, it was like, you're the guy now. You are our hope, which is a bad situation to put an 18-year-old in. Right? Like, is bad. But anyway, he gets to his second, he scores almost 30 goals in Philadelphia, and his exit meeting, he says, my goal is always to score 30 goals next year. Like, I want to score 30 goals. I want to take steps in my offensive career. And Bobby Clark at the time is like, well, that was the wrong answer, because he doesn't like hearing that the player's goals are to score more, right? Like, that's the attitude that he had. So when he comes back to training camp that fall, Roger Nielsen, rest in peace, is coaching, and he goes right up to Alexander Daig on like day 2 of training camp and is like, yeah, we're going to play you on the third line and you're going to be a defensive forward from now on. And Daig is just like, excuse me, like what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, we don't think you play defense well enough, so we're going to stick you there until you play defense well, and your days of scoring goals are over, and we just want to give more offensive minutes to the big boys. And he was like, well, then why am I here? Like, what is happening? Like, what? He's like, I just had the best year of my career and we could be a Stanley Cup winning team and you're completely changing the way I play. Anyway, fascinating documentary. He's a really cool dude. And I highly recommend it to anybody. But that'll be it for tonight, I think. Thank you very much to our sponsors, of course, Fanatics. You can scan the QR code or check the description for the link, and it'll give us a kickback on everything you buy. We're also brought to you by Puck Preps, where Sam and I both write, along with some other smart people, so you can help pay our bills with a subscription over there.
For Jordan.
Right, Jordan Millette is the worst. But actually, no, we shouldn't send strays his way. He lives in Ottawa. He has it bad enough. Where was I? Oh yeah, Fractal Hockey Consulting, which is my company dedicated to hand track player analysis packages, dedicated for college, Europe, and whatever else an organization might need. And of course, Scouching.ca. The QR code is up there above us there, and you can just go to Scouching.ca, where a subscription gets you all kind of fun data tools, a really fun Discord server where we throw video around all the time and yell and scream all the time about all kinds of stuff in the world of hockey, and it's worth a look. So thank you very much, Sam. Thank you. This was a good time. And we'll be back on Thursday afternoon to do an all-star game preview show. So tune in for that. It's going to be a lot of fun this weekend, and have a lovely next few days. Adios.